Chapter 492, War God Academy. Chapter 492, War God Academy. Reverie _ Chapter 492 9 Dragons, Tyrant Body Art, Lord Formation Spirit. Is that possible? Zhao Tian said coldly. He was the prodigy role's number 1 2 generations ago, and with 1 foot into Flower Blossom tier, his strength was formidable, and he was also quite conceited. The Formation Spirit glanced at him and said balefully, "You're doubting this, Lord? Doesn't Lord Formation Spirit think it suspicious?" Zhao Tian snorted. "This Lord's authority doesn't not allow for defiance," the Formation Spirit said coldly and waved its hand towards Zhao Tian. Instantly, a massive white tiger appeared from thin air, pouncing towards Zhao Tian. Once the white tiger came out, everyone felt an endless chill, afraid to face it from the depths of their souls. It was too strong to an unfathomable degree. Zhao Tian was also greatly surprised, never expecting the Formation Spirit would attack him, nor did he even think that this attack would be so terrifying. He no longer had any doubts, taking out a spiritual infant tier law decree and throwing it at the white tiger. Hong! The law decree burned and turned into an ice vulture, flapping its wings at the white tiger and swirling up a piercingly cold wind. However, the white tiger simply opened its mouth and devoured the entire ice vulture, and with another bite, Zhao Tian also disappeared in its mouth. Hiss! Everyone lost their voice altogether. That was a spiritual infant tier law decree, but the white tiger devoured the attack in 1 bite. How terrifying was its strength? No wonder everyone wanted to obtain this place's legacy. The Formation Spirit alone was this strong, and if one obtained the true legacy, how strong could one become? The Formation Spirit retracted the white tiger and said indifferently towards everyone, "Is there anyone that still doubts this, Lord?" Everyone hurriedly shook their heads together. Even if the Formation Spirit had intentionally covered it up, who dared to have any objections? In this world, whoever was the strongest had the final say. Complaining was the behavior of the weak. The Formation Spirit couldn't be bothered to say what the top 2's records were, and simply looked at Hunyo a few times. The 3 inside were somewhat freakish, all of them full of tricks, but were in the range of being understandable. Only this little girl couldn't have her divine sense extracted. That was definitely the strangest thing, the first such case in history. In the mental space, Ling Han and the others knew that they entered top 3 and were full of expectations. What rewards could they receive? Ronghuan Xian, your 3rd place in this time's exam. Here are 3 mystic arts. You can choose one. The Formation Spirit first appeared on Ronghuan Xian's side. Pooh! Ronghuan Xian instantly spurted out. He was originally filled with confidence that he would definitely get 1st place. Crossing into the Flower Blossom tier from the spiritual Pedestal tier, wasn't that kick-ass? Was there anyone in the world who could compare? However, he was actually 3rd. That's impossible. Is there a mistake? I'm only 3rd? Said Ronghuan Xian, displeased but more so in disbelief. The Formation Spirit's anger still hadn't subsided, and seeing Ronghuan Xian challenging it, it instantly erupted with fury, charging up to give him a vicious beating. After knocking Ronghuan Xian out, it randomly threw a ball of light onto Ronghuan Xian's head, with it sinking right in. Get out! It kicked Ronghuan Xian, whose divine sense immediately returned, being jolted out of the room. Ah! Ronghuan Xian rolled all over the ground. As his divine sense returned, he felt pain all over his body, as if he'd truly been given a sound thrashing. However, he immediately discovered that everyone stared at him fiendishly and hurriedly jumped into 3 lives corpse casket. As arrogant as he was, he didn't dare provoke the 15 Flower Blossom tier warriors at the scene. No! He very soon let out a tragic shout, because he'd actually received the secrets on how to refine a medicinal pill. He wasn't an alchemist, so why the heck give him a medicinal pill secrets? It was his fault for offending the Formation Spirit, and there was absolutely nothing to argue about. The Formation Spirit appeared once again, but in Yin Tian Zhao's space. Yin Tian Zhao, your 2nd place in this time's test. Here are 3 types of medicinal pills. You can choose one. It said almost the same thing. However, the rewards changed. What? Tian Zhao stood up in shock. He defeated an opponent of the Flower Blossom tier at 20 stars battle prowess. With the tier of a spiritual pedestal tier, this was an irreplicable miracle. He possessed a god's memories and battling with the divine sense, he was ridiculously strong. However, this didn't even get him first place, so how could he believe it? What? You also doubt this, Lord? The formation said fiercely. It wanted to beat someone again. I wouldn't dare. Tian Zhao was more sensible. He naturally knew what powers this formation spirit possessed. Even in former years when he had been in his prime, he might not dare to provoke it, let alone now that he only had a part of a memory. Very good that you wouldn't dare. Here, pick quickly, the formation spirit said coldly. There were 3 balls of light in its hands, each wrapping a medicinal pill. Soon, the formation spirit came to where Ling Han was. Ling Han, you're first in this time's test. Here are 3 mystic arts, you can choose one, it said. The rewards changed again. Ling Han revealed a smile and instead asked, the second and third, what were their records? The 2 were both at the spiritual pedestal tier, beating Flower Blossom tier 5 stars and 20 stars, respectively, the formation spirit said dully. Ling Han couldn't help but be astounded. How could someone be so strong? No, they probably were the same as him, using a loophole. Choose quickly. The formation spirit was somewhat impatient. Ling Han looked at the 3 balls of light in its hands and said, what are these mystic arts? Place the light balls on your forehead to see the outline of the mystic arts. If it weren't for the countless stars that you surpassed, you wouldn't be qualified to pick any of these 3 mystic arts, the formation spirit said. Ling Han did as he was told, and instantly revealed a surprised look. These 3 mystic arts were all gems. Great Illusion, Heavenly Spirit Formation, 108 Doctrines of Alchemy, and 9 Dragons Tyrant Art, corresponding to formations, alchemy, and martial arts. Ling Han looked at the introduction. These were all god tier. He only hesitated slightly before making a choice, picking the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art. He had just dabbled in formations. It was only supplementary and couldn't upstage martial arts. As for alchemy, he still had a long time before shattering the void and becoming a god. So what meaning did a god tier pill recipe have? Thus, he chose the martial arts mystic arts. The 9 Dragon Tyrant Body Art was a physical art, and at its pinnacle, one could become god in flesh, possessing the power of 9 true dragons. A true dragon, one of the strongest amongst mythical beasts, possessing the physical strength of 9 true dragons. How terrifying would that be? However, this 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art wasn't complete, with only 1/3 of it, and when cultivated to the extreme, one could only possess the power of 3 true dragons. How stingy! How come it's only 1/3? Ling Han protested. There are 2 more rounds of tests afterwards, and if you can get first in both, you'll have the chance to complete it, the formation spirit said indifferently, snatched the ball of light and pressed it at Ling Han. Instantly, flashes of golden characters flowed into Ling Han's body, fusing with him. Get lost. The formation also kicked Ling Han out. Ling Han had no reaction. His divine sense was full of the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art, turning into his memories, but those cryptic characters were extremely hard to understand. Even he felt a bit toilsome. 493. Azure Flame Vulture. Pa! Ling Han's divine sense returned, thrown out. Everyone looked at Ling Han. This guy was the last to come out. So could he be first place in this time's exam? The 3rd place had 5 stars Flower Blossom tier battle prowess, so how strong was this guy's battle prowess? But how could a mere spiritual pedestal tier warrior surpass the boundary of mortals? Masterling, what treasures did you acquire? A Flower Blossom tier elite said. This was supposed to be one's secret that one should never ask, but taking advantage of his higher tier, he could act unrestrained. Moreover, this was still because he worried about Ling Han's heaven-grade alchemist identity, or else he'd just rob him. Ling Han glared at him and said, the hell does that have to do with you? That Flower Blossom tier elite choked on his saliva. His expression changed drastically. He was about to flip about. However, Ling Han was a heaven-grade alchemist. Considering status, Ling Han's was way higher than his, so what if Ling Han rained down curses on him on spot? One not being afraid of a heaven-grade alchemist was one matter, but acting violently towards one was another matter. His gaze was chilling, filled with killing intent. As long as Ling Han was left out, or when no other flower blossom tier warriors were beside him, he would seize the treasures and kill all witnesses. So what if Ling Han was a heaven-grade alchemist? Know that he entered the mystery realm. His survival was naturally his own responsibly. Ling Han took in his killing intent, revealing a cold smile. With two great spirits of the five elements, what fear of a flower blossom tier opponent did he need to have? If he had Yukayu spend another law decree, then it was even possible to kill the guy. Some were joyous, and some were hateful. Rong Huanxian was slightly gloomier because he offended the formation spirit and had no choice to pick at all, receiving alchemy techniques. Although written on it were all heaven-grade medicinal recipes, of what use it was to him. Tian Zhao was much luckier. He received a precious medicinal pill, enough to let him break through into the flower blossom tier. Thus, he kept his eyes on Ling Han, believing that the mystic art that Ling Han received was definitely more precious. Flower blossom tier elites all looked Ling Han, Tian Zhao, and Rong Huanxian. They wanted the treasures on them, and even more so wanted to know the secret of how the three of them could battle flower blossom tier opponents while at the spiritual pedestal tier. With the formation spirit pressing them, they set out towards a field of mountains and plains where terrifying beasts ran wild. Only after passing through could they arrive at the second test location. The rules were similar. 3 people could receive rewards, but the test was definitely not about tier-surpassing battle prowess, or it would have no meaning. The 6 of them set out. Lu Yutong and the others were all curious and wanted to know what treasures Ling Han received. Ling Han told them about 9 dragons' tyrant body art, making everyone greatly envious. The name alone sounded quite formidable. Hunyo, how come you didn't make it into the top 3? Ling Han felt it very strange. With Hunyo's battle prowess fully unleashed, it was very possible to bite a flower blossom tier 20 stars to death. Nyo doesn't know either, can't enter, Hunyo replied. After Ling Han asked clearly, he couldn't help but be astounded Hunyo actually didn't participate in the test. Not that she didn't enter that house, but the formation spirit had no way of extracting her divine sense, so there was naturally no way to carry out the test. Hiss, even a god-tier formation couldn't extract Hunyo's soul. The little girl's soul was actually that stable. No wonder even primal chaos source rock couldn't affect her. Young Master Han, our path won't be peaceful, right? Kenyi asked. Of course not. Ling Han said smilingly, paused, then said, strange. Why don't I see Wenjian? Maybe he got caught up somewhere. Or encountered a ferocious beast and died. Yukayu said, filled with evil intentions. That man was handsome to the point of making people envious. Ling Han laughed loudly, shook his head and said, Wenjian's not one to be short-lived. This person is very likely to stir up a storm in the future. He didn't come in time probably because he received other prospects. What? He was suddenly started. Why did Wenjian come to North Region by himself? Could it really be to admire Zhu Xian'er's beauty? A genius like Wenjian definitely wouldn't specially travel 10,000 miles just because he heard of a woman's beauty. Now was it so coincidental that he just happened to encounter the opening of 12 Heaven Mystery Realm? A thought suddenly occurred to him. A bold guess Wenjian could possibly have acquired a key. With such a lure, Wenjian crossed over regions and even came alone because was feared that he'd let the cat out of the bag, having opportunities stolen. After all, he was only at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Of course, this was only a guess, but Ling Han was quite certain that this was the case. Leaving the city area, a field of mountains and forests were up ahead. 100-feet tall trees could be seen everywhere, and they were multicolored and bright, as if a bouquet of flowers in full bloom. However, the mountains and forests were definitely not safe. Just like how one could only accept the first test after passing through the city gates, and maybe the rewards would be the same. To take the second test and obtain a second reward, one also had to prove one's strength, and even luck. There were spiritual infant tier beasts here, and if they bumped into one, they definitely would be doomed. Careful, we might not just encounter the beasts here, but also flower blossom tier bandits, Ling Han said. Everyone nodded, cautious and solemn. Especially Yukayu. He directly held a spiritual infant tier law decree in hand and looked like he'd throw it if anyone dared come over, having the ferocity of a hot-headed fellow. The people split up long before entering the forest. This was inside a mystery realm. Who would believe anyone easily unless the other was an intimate friend? What if they were stabbed from behind the back? Who would they cry their grievances to? Gwa, gwa, gwa. Bird cries were endless in the forest. Massive birds could be seen gliding across the sky from time to time. Their wings spanned over 100 feet, with feathers like swords. Some didn't have any feathers at all, but instead long black scales that emitted the presence of cold iron. They saw a giant azure vulture snatch a bowl, as if lifting a chiclet. Iron scale redback bull. When everyone saw clearly, they all gasped in astonishment, because the iron scale redback bull was a spiritual infant tier being, but now, the azure vulture took it down easily. So what level was that azure vulture? Ling Han's gaze tensed. This azure vulture was a deity transformation tier beast called Azure Flame Vulture. It could spew out azure flames, and even melt 8th tier rare metals. Right, it was a king among beasts. Normal deity transformation tier beasts definitely didn't have such terrifying power. If this Azure Flame Vulture were to launch an attack at them, then he would definitely store everyone into the Black Tower. But as to when Yukayu and Zhu Xian'er would be let out, that was unsure. Yukayu was too big-mouthed, and Zhu Xian'er hadn't received his trust yet, so these two people definitely couldn't know the secrets of the Black Tower. Fortunately, the Azure Flame Vulture only swept them with a cold glance, then flew away as if it felt that these puny reptiles were beneath its attention. 494. Stealing eggs. The 6 of them didn't dare to be careless. It was too dangerous here, as any random powerful beast could kill them 100 times. But thinking of the opportunities they could get, no one turned tail. Moreover, this was also a rare occasion to toughen themselves. Hovering between life and death could greatly increase a martial artist's cultivation progression. Their luck wasn't bad, and they encountered no powerful beasts until half a day later, when a beast dashed out. It was near 10 feet tall, and its hair was dark and shining. It had 4 long, thick legs with a 3 feet long tail like a long mace. However, it had the head of a snake, and flicked its red tongue that was about a foot long. The tongue was split at the tip like a halberd. Flower Blossom Tier. Everyone drew a cold breath. This place was too unfriendly, as a random beast that popped out was at the Flower Blossom Tier, leaving absolutely no way for people to survive. Without a word, Ling Han summoned the rock spirit. This beast wasn't a test for them. It was here to take their lives. Ong! The rock spirit roared at the snake-headed beast. The former was obviously fearless. The snake-headed beast revealed a hint of fear. It wasn't a king among beasts, so even though its tier was clearly higher than the rock spirits, it appeared hesitant, not daring to attack rashly. Wah, a giant rock. Hunyo's eyes lit up. It was her first time seeing the rock spirit. Immediately jumping onto the rock spirit's head, she pointed at the snake-headed beast and said, "Quick, quick, quick. Nyo wants to eat meat. Take down this big monster." The rock spirit was enraged. Other than Ling Han, it looked down upon everyone who could ride on its head. The spirits of the 5 elements had the pride of being a spirit of the 5 elements. At that time, when Ling Han messed it up so badly, it still didn't yield. Small Tower had to move out to scare it into submission. So what was a small little girl? It was about to vent its anger, but then was suddenly startled as it felt a terrifying presence from Hunyo. It instantly became as obedient as a dog, roaring loudly as it charged at the snake-headed beast. Hit, 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 hit. Hunyo clapped and laughed as she commanded it. Ling Han felt it strange. The rock spirit actually listened to Hunyo. Was its brain really stuffed with rocks? The snake-headed beast fought with the rock spirit a few rounds and started to escape. It already experienced its immense power and terrifying recovery ability. It was absolutely no match for it at all, so it could only escape. Don't let it run. Chase it. Hunyo issued orders and controlled the rock spirit on the chase. However, in a short while, the rock spirit brought Hunyo back. The little girl was sulky. Scolding the rock spirit, she said, "How useless, letting Nyo's meat fly. If you weren't full of rocks, Nyo would eat you." The rock spirit offered no excuses, only nodding obediently, currying favor with her like a sycophant. Was this still the blockhead yet rough rock spirit? Such a powerful puppet. Zhu Xian'er, who didn't know the truth, exclaimed this was a flower blossom tear puppet. She looked at Ling Han and exclaimed spontaneously in admiration. Young Master Han proves to be a genius, a king in alchemy, and boasting surprising mastery in formations as well. Zu'er is absolutely impressed. Her bearing was intoxicating. Even with Ling Han's self-cultivation, he couldn't help but be moved, feeling real good inside. Hunyo was discontented and said, "Big rock, smack this ugly woman flat." The rock spirit instantly revealed an ominous look, staring at Zhu Xian'er. Ling Han hurriedly stopped it and said, "Don't be mischievous." Hunyo started playing with her fingers and muttered, "Nyo's not being mischievous, Nyo's serious." Zhu Xian'er shivered in fright, never thinking such a little girl would be so jealous. The rock spirit still listened more to Ling Han. After all, Ling Han was the master. Ling Han thought briefly that he might as well not store this guy in the Black Tower. This place was truly dangerous, and maybe a spiritual infant tier beast would really jump out, so it was better to let the rock spirit guard on the outside. They walked for a while, and a firmament tree appeared before them. Its roots were so thick that 100 people could wrap their arms around it, and its height reached several hundred feet. However, the strange thing was that it almost didn't have any branches. It was simply just a bare trunk, as if a pillar. It seldomly had a few branches that stretched out, but they were thin and short like fur, too inconspicuous. At the treetop spread a giant crown, but examining closely, it wasn't a crown, it was clearly a bird's nest. Oh my, what a large nest! Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth. After one look, he looked pleasantly surprised and said, "There's an egg inside the bird's nest, and by the patterns on the eggshell, it should have been delivered by the Azure Flame Vulture. And the Azure Flame Vulture isn't here." Yukayu opened his mouth widely and said, "Young Master Han, you can't be having thoughts about that egg, right?" He was truly startled. The Azure Flame Vulture was at the deity transformation tier, and no one in the North region would be its rival, but Ling Han actually dared to steal its progeny. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "Why not?" Then, he elaborated with conviction, "Here, the Azure Flame Vulture can only be trapped in such a small place, but following us outside, it can truly fly freely. I'm doing a good thing." Zhu Xian'er sighed and said, "Being a thief so openly and righteously, it's the first time Xian'er's encountered someone like that." "Me too. I second that." Lu Yutong and Kenyi chimed in one after another. Hunyo clapped as she said, "Nyo supports Ling Han. Scoop out the egg and boil it to eat." So, she was truly one to get things done, immediately climbing along the trunk, agile like monkey. Her speed was not a single bit slower than when the rock spirit rose into the sky, and seeing this, Ling Han no longer let the rock spirit fly him towards the treetop. In a short while, Hunyo climbed down with a single hand. With the other hand, she hugged an egg no smaller than she was, making the others who looked on really worried that she might fall down with the egg. Though she easily stole the egg, the Azure Flame Vulture's presence remained in the nest. It was a great deterrence for any beast and martial artist, guaranteeing that even spiritual infant tier beings wouldn't dare come close. Otherwise, their limbs would go soft and lose even the power to move. But against a freak like Hunyo, it was of no use at all. Hunyo soon landed, hugging the egg happily, and said, "Steamed or fired?" "Neither." Ling Han snatched it. "Got to raise it. Don't you have any thoughts about it?" "Woo, Nyo wants to eat." Nyo pouted, expressing her discontent. Ling Han ignored her and put the bird egg right into the Black Tower. Yu and Zhu Xian didn't dwell on it. Called a living thing be stored into a spatial ring? Wouldn't a live thing become dead? Let's run. The six of them hurriedly left. If the azure flame vulture came back now, things would be grave. The six of them walked real far, and suddenly an earth-shaking cry sounded. The sound waves were like sharp swords, shwa, 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 as the surrounding trees were sliced into pieces. Although they defended with full strength, Qin Yi and Li Yutong were still slashed all over their bodies because the two's tier was slightly lower. The azure flame vulture is back. Run. The six of them hurriedly sped up, while Ling Han thought to himself that if the azure flame vulture discovered their tracks, he would immediately put everyone into the Black Tower. Xiao. At this moment, a flash of sword light suddenly shot out from the side, bright and dazzling, piercing right under Ling Han's rib. Chapter 493, Sneak Attack. Chapter 493, Sneak Attack. Reverie _. The timing of this sneak attack was truly incredible. As everyone was preoccupied with running for their lives, no one ever expected a sword would suddenly strike at them. Even Ling Han didn't anticipate it. His divine sense didn't discover any powerful souls nearby. Most were normal, like the earthworms in the ground and the mice in the underbrush, so he simply swept past them. However, this sword attack was extraordinarily powerful, with 9 flashes of sword chi chained to the sword's edge, greatly increasing the attack power and clearly aiming to deal a deadly blow. In such time of haste, Ling Han still raised his head for a glance, and the prowler's face immediately heaved in sight. Tian Zhao had already advanced into the Flower Blossom tier. This attack Ling Han couldn't dodge, but it didn't matter. He had the Black Tower, and even if it were 3 times faster, Ling Han was still certain he would have enough time to enter the Black Tower the instant the blade's edge touched his body. He actually had the mood to think about how this guy proved to be one who received a god's memories. Advancing into the Flower Blossom tier was like walking 2 steps, without a bit of difficulty. However, he was only at 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier earlier, but now he advanced into the Flower Blossom tier. All of a sudden, wasn't this speed too frightening? Wait, they received rewards at the first stage. He received the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art, and if Tian Zhao received medicinal pills, then it wouldn't be strange for him to cross into the Flower Blossom tier all of a sudden. After this thought flashed across his mind, Ling Han was about to enter the Black Tower, calling the golem to fight. But at this moment, a figure in white dove in front of him, embracing him and shielding him with her body. It was Zhu Xian. Stupid girl, he was absolutely fine, but being hugged, he couldn't even enter the Black Tower, unless he immediately knocked her out and placed her inside. But Tian Zhao's attack would probably already pierce him as he raised his hand. Ling Han felt torn between laughter and tears. Are you trying to help me or hurt me? Pooh. Before the turn of a thought, Zhu Xian was struck by the sword. The sword entered her body, and almost without stopping, it pierced at Ling Han. The power of the Flower Blossom tier was too strong. Even a spiritual pedestal tier warrior guarding with their life wouldn't have the effect of reducing the attack down by much. When the sword point pierced Ling Han's body, it was immediately stopped by the Thunder Battle Armor. This was a 10th tier treasured armor. An extremely tough item. How could it possibly be penetrated? But the power of the Flower Blossom tier was too strong, and as the long sword's mighty power transmitted through the Thunder Battle Armor to Ling Han's body, it instantly wreaked havoc inside it. It was useless even though he was at the Iron Sheet body, as the destructive power's impact made him cough out blood violently, and the veins all over his body burst one after another. He was in such a state, so Zhu Xian was naturally far worse. Her delicate body went soft right away as her life force dropped rapidly. Ling Han was furious as he yelled, "Small rock, kill him." His figure flashed, bringing Zhu Xian into the Black Tower. They're all gone. Yu cried out, looking at the others, but the other 3 didn't look surprised at all. He couldn't help but be driven mad. Am I the only one that thinks it's strange? 2 large living people suddenly disappeared. Dare to harm Nyo's Ling Han. Nyo's very mad. Nyo will bite you to death. Nyo's face was full of killing intent as she charged at Tian Zhao, cooperating with the golem and attacking viciously. Tian Zhao revealed an astounded look. He knew that Ling Han had a treasured armor, thus he calculated the timing and gave him no chance for Ling Han to activate it with his sneak attack. He possessed a god's memories, so naturally he had a way to hide his own presence, concealing from Ling Han's divine sense and taking the chance when the Azure Flame Vulture rioted to launch a sneak attack succeeding in one blow. However, something unexpected still happened. First, the girl blocked part of it for Ling Han, and although the spiritual pedestal tier wasn't much, it definitely influenced it somewhat. What he felt was even more unexpected was that Ling Han and the girl disappeared together. He clearly didn't feel space tearing apart, so they shouldn't have left by teleportation. Could it be that Ling Han had a treasure that could accommodate living things? Such a treasure in his world was also considerably precious. Those not of noble status could not possess it. His gaze instantly burned with desire. He definitely had to acquire such a treasure. Hong, the golem's attack approached, while Hunyo carried out movement arts. Her speed was ridiculously fast as she bit at him from behind. Tian Zhao could only greet the enemy first, the spirit of the five elements. Even he didn't dare to underestimate. After all, he wasn't in the body of a god now. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han hurriedly summoned the power of the tower to heal himself, yet discovering it was of no use. "Small tower, why are my injuries not recovering?" he asked. "Who told you the Black Tower could heal injuries?" Small Tower appeared and said in a calm manner, "Black Tower can drive away evil foreign powers, but has no use at all for healing." Ling Han sighed and said, "If I die, you'll have to search for a new master. Why are you still so calm?" "Oh, merely changing a master. So be it. My life is endless anyways," Small Tower said indifferently. Sht. Ling Han had no time to get angry, circulating a drop of indestructible true fluid. As long as he didn't die instantly, indestructible true fluid could save him. He checked Zhu Xian'er's injuries in haste, yet immediately frowned. This foolish girl didn't get struck on a vital point, but the destructive power of the flower blossom tier was too scary, shattering all her organs. Her insides were bleeding profusely, incapable of withstanding much longer before the beauty would perish. Although Ling Han didn't need her saving, he definitely wouldn't allow someone to die for him. Ling Han said solemnly, "Small Tower, think of way to stabilize her condition. I'm going to refine pills." Small Tower sensed slightly and said, "She's nearing death. I need to expend source power to maintain her condition so that it doesn't worsen. You have to think clearly. My source power now is limited and will be gone once it's used, unable to manifest again to help you." "No need to consider. She can't die," Ling Han said unhesitatingly. "Okay." Small Tower nodded by shaking lightly, and divine light immediately enveloped Zhu Xian'er's body. Wondrous presence circulated, locking the little life force that was left in her and stopping her condition from worsening. Ling Han's divine sense ventured out of the Black Tower, seeing that the rock spirit and Hunyo joining hands had gained them the advantage. He stopped worrying and focused on refining pills. There were already lots of spiritual grasses inside the Black Tower, but still too little high-tier ones, so what could be refined now was the Earth-grade low-level, White Phoenix Water True Pill, a holy medicine of healing. However, whether or not it could heal Zhu Xian'er's injuries, Ling Han was not in the least bit sure. Could he add a drop of indestructible true fluid? Ling Han suddenly thought. This was a sacred product of healing, and as long as one wasn't dead, one drop could instantly recover one's injuries. He had just circulated one, and now his injuries were completely recovered. However, how could the indestructible true fluid be taken out? "Small Tower, do you have a way?" he asked. Chapter 494, Last Resort. Chapter 494, Last Resort. Reverie _ The indestructible true fluid is only effective for those cultivating the indestructible heaven scroll. Even if you took it out, its effects would reduce drastically, Small Tower said indifferently. Reduce drastically, but still effective, righty? Ling Han's gaze brightened. Yes, This is a treasured medicine for the human body extracted by the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Its effects are the best for oneself, and second for others cultivating indestructible Heaven Scroll. As for others, the effects will decrease by 100 times. Small Tower still said dully. As long as it's useful. Ling Han was the Grandmaster of Alchemy. He forcibly added 5 drops of the indestructible True fluid to the White Phoenix Water True Pills recipe. This was also the total amount he could extract. He'd had just consumed 1 drop to save himself. In only half an hour, he refined the pill. There was just one that condensed 5 drops of indestructible True Fluid's essence, possessing amazing recovery effect. Last resort. Ling Han fed the pill to Zhu Xian'er, but she was already near death, her jaw tightly shut, so how could she take it in? Ling Han tore off her veil and pried open her jaw, shoved the medicinal pill inside, and then poured down some diluted spiritual liquid. The medicinal was inside her mouth, but it couldn't seem to be swallowed. Si-chan, help, pass her some air. Ling Han hurriedly called Li Si-chan over. Seeing Zhu Xian'er's heavily injured state, Li Si-chan was first taken aback and then stupefied. Revealing disbelief in her eyes, she muttered, "How could there be such a beautiful person?" Ling Han just noticed that he tore off Zhu Xian'er's veil and revealed her true appearance. She was breathtakingly beautiful as expected, no less beautiful than Heavenly Phoenix in those years. The difference is that Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was like a goddess of war, heroic in posture, illuminatingly beautiful, and charming at her core. Zhu Xian'er was cold, like a bright moon and out of this world. Of course, in terms of disposition, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was a notch above. After all, she was one of the 7 heaven-tier elites in his former life, and how could that confident bearing be something normal people could strive for? Don't stare blankly, hurry. Ling Han hurriedly urged as the small tower's source power was soon going to be expended. Li Si-chan hurriedly ran over and passed a breath of air to Zhu Xian'er from mouth to mouth, making her swallow White Phoenix Water True Pill. Visibly, Zhu Xian'er's wounds were recovering at a miraculous speed, and so were her internal organs, but she still hadn't woken up under the impact of the flower blossom tier martial intent. Her divine sense was near shattered. Ling Han sighed. Injury of the divine sense. He was also at a loss. Now Zhu Xian'er's life was restored, but whether she could wake up and when she would wake up depended on her desire for survival and tenacity. Si-chan, take care of her, he said, then burning with killing intent, he flashed out of the black tower. However, Yin Tian Zhao was already gone. He ran. Hu Niu and Small Rock are chasing, Kenyi said. The corner of Yu Kai-Yu's mouth twitched as he muttered, "Why am I the only one who finds it strange that 2 people vanished out of thin air, and now one appeared out of thin air? Could everyone be abnormal, or am I the only abnormal one?" "Young Master Han, how's Fairy Zhu?" he hurriedly asked. "Won't die." Ling Han nodded. As they were speaking, the rock spirit returned with Hu Niu sitting on its shoulder. "Dang it," he slipped away. "I only bit off 1 arm. Stinks like heck." Hu Niu tossed down a severed arm. Lu Yutong and the others were shocked. Even with the rock spirit's help, it was still a flower blossom tear against a flower blossom tear tearing off one of Yin Tian Zhao's arms. Despite that, Hu Niu's battle prowess was truly strong. Ling Han's expression was still cold. Yin Tian Zhao possessed a god's memories, and when he was torn into pieces back then, he still recovered perfectly fine afterwards, didn't he? For such an existence, regenerating a severed limb was probably not something difficult. He decided that the next time he saw Yin Tian Zhao, if he still hadn't reached Flower Blossom Tier, then he would let Small Tower give him a power boost to strike down Yin Tian Zhao for sure. It was the pill he refined that awakened Yin Tian Zhao from the state of slumber, being the one to bring about his appearance. He naturally should be the one to end him as WL. "Young Master Han. Young Master Han." Yu Kai-Yu ran over. "Where did you just go? And where's Fairy Qi? Why don't you guys find it strange? Why am I the only one curious?" Ling Han blinked and said, "You've got blurry vision." "Blurry Maya's asterisk. Zhu Xian'er's clearly not here. Why don't you give me a reason?" Ling Han didn't explain at all, so Yu could only stand there with his mouth twitching. Was he going to catch Ling Han by his neck and force him to explain? Let's leave here first, Ling Han said. The five continued onwards. With Yin Tian Zhao's sneak attack, they were even more cautious, but the road following was unusually smooth, encountering not a single assault from beasts, walking smoothly out of the mountains and forests. Presumably, the azure flame vulture's show of force intimidated the other beasts to stay in their lairs and not dare to come out. Ahead was a vast stretch of flatland, and in the distance was a building, appearing extremely conspicuous on the dark green flatland. This should be the place of the second test. The five walked over quickly, and soon, they arrived before the building. They came relatively early. There were only 10 people here. The formation spirit appeared and said indifferently, "In one more day, the test will begin." Then, it glanced at Ling Han. "You sure can stir up trouble." Ling Han said faintly, "What trouble did I cause? The entire forest is in a riot. Wasn't it you who caused the trouble?" The formation spirit snorted. Ling Han snickered and said, "No rules about not doing that, right? Causing more trouble for me," the formation spirit said in discontentment. "If it weren't for the trouble you caused, the people that can come to the second stage would at least decrease by half." The first few who arrived were shocked. What exactly did Ling Han do? Ling Han wouldn't possibly say that he stole an azure flame vulture's egg to foster a beast of at least deity transformation tier in the future, keeping his mouth shut, which left the others itching on the inside. A day later, more and more people arrived at the second stage, and tallying, there were over 70 people. In other words, among those who came from the first stage, over half arrived. Ling Han set up a tent, taking the chance to go into the Black Tower because Zhu Xian'er woke up. The injuries on her body were completely healed, but her divine sense was still heavily damaged. Recovering wasn't a day's effort, but 1 to 2 months' time. But if she could endure past this stage, it would actually be of great help to her martial arts progression. Waking up from such an injury, this was a type of creation and destruction. At a loss, Zhu Xian'er asked, "Young Master Han, where's this place?" Moreover, she even saw Lic Chan here. Chapter 495, Resolving Formations. Chapter 495, Resolving Formations. Reverie _ From the moment Zhu Xian'er stepped out and blocked the attack for him, Ling Han considered Zhu Xian'er a friend. Presumably, Zhu Xian'er probably wasn't the type not to be able to keep secrets, so he only hesitated a little and said, "This is inside my spatial spirit tool." Zhu Xian'er was first taken aback, and then revealed an astonished expression and said, "How's that possible? Spatial spirit tools can't accommodate living things." Ling Han said smilingly, "Aren't you in it right now?" Zhu Xian'er was startled for a good while before finally accepting this reality, and went on, "But how's this spatial spirit tool so massive? This is almost like a world." "That's why. This secret can't be known by others," Ling Han said sternly. Zhu Xian'er hurriedly nodded. A spatial spirit tool that was almost infinitely large and could accommodate living things, the value of it was insane. It was no wonder Ling Han kept this secret all along. However, now Ling Han let her in on this secret, instantly making her feel like as if she'd tasted honey. The sweetness felt all the way to the bottom of her heart. "Xian'er will definitely keep this secret," she also said sternly. "Focus on recuperating. There is plenty of spirit medicine here. Use the origin crystals as you please. Recover from the injury of the soul first, or else you won't be able to cultivate it all." Ling Han said. "Yes." Zhu Xian'er nodded her head meekly. She no longer wore a veil, showing her remarkably delicate face, so breathtaking that Ling Han felt his heartbeat speed up. Fortunately, he was used to seeing heavenly phoenix divine maiden's beauty in his former life. Otherwise, he truly might be charmed by this lass. Ling Han didn't leave the Black Tower immediately. After leaving the Divine Temple, he was held up by all sorts of things along the way and hadn't had the chance to study these 2 pieces of patterned beast bones, as well as 2 other gods' corpses. Inside the Black Tower, he no longer feared the coercive pressure of the gods and began to study in detail. These two gods' corpses looked complete, but the divine essence inside was exhausted, clearly all absorbed by the blood-sucking bugs in the long period of time. Could the gods' bones ground to powder be added into medicine? Ling Han muttered. Although they're not humans, they're in human form, and refining humans' bones into medicine feels quite disgusting. Forget it, just leave it for now. He picked up the two beast skulls and studied the two bone patterns carefully. If he could comprehend the profoundness within, then it would increase his battle prowess by a lot. A night passed. Ling Han exited the Black Tower as the second stage's test was about to be underway. Those who want to participate in the test go in, and all those who can walk out will receive a reward. The top 3 will receive a great prize, the formation spirit said. The less time taken, the better the reward. Everyone was excited. In the first stage, only the top 3 had rewards, but this stage, all those who passed can receive a reward. The difficulty probably increased by quite a lot. They all entered that building, and the scenery in front of their eyes changed immediately to a place full of mist. The surroundings were stone pillars, on which all sorts of patterns were engraved. Many people entered at once, but now everyone was all alone, no longer able to see others. Formations. Ling Han sighed. So the second stage was formations. Resolving and leaving from the formation would count as a pass, and the fastest ones could receive generous rewards. He began circling inside the formation. The mist was steaming and hung. Suddenly a beast appeared, diving towards him. He slashed it into pieces with one strike, but no blood splattered. It was manifested by the formation, not being a true entity. By the looks of the beast's strength, this should be a 5th-tier formation that mainly confuses the mind, and as its auxiliary effect would be beasts formed from spiritual qi. Ling Han soon saw through the formation's secrets. This was probably also adjusted depending on each individual's tier, or else if a flower blossom tier beast came, how would he block it? The prerequisite for resolving the formation was being able to withstand the formation's attacks. Otherwise, if one's life was no more, then how would one resolve the formation? Ling Han's mind was clear. He had entered many historic sites in his previous life, and didn't lack understanding of formations. In setting up a formation, he certainly was a newbie, but in resolving formations, he was a veteran. Soon, he had an inkling of it and walked within the formation, sometimes going left and sometimes going right, almost randomly. However, only after 10 minutes, it suddenly became clear ahead. He'd walked out of the formation. However, he wasn't the first one. Hunyo was already in front of him, gnawing on meat in boredom. Seeing Ling Han, she immediately ran over cheerfully, and not caring about her oily hands, she hugged Ling Han and said, "Nyo missed you." Ling Han said with a smile, "When did Nyo arrive?" "It seems like a long while," Hunyo said, biting on her fingers. "This little girl is very strange." The formation spirit appeared, pointing, and Hunyo as it said, "I've never seen such a person that wasn't affected by the formation in the slightest degree and moved without following the formation's rules yet walking out of the formation." Ling Han was astounded. When he walked out of the formation earlier, he walked following how the formation was set up and definitely didn't walk in a straight line, and instead circled back and forth as if walking in a maze. However, the formation spirit meant that Hunyo didn't walk following the formation and simply ran straight out. This was truly surprising. "Nyo is a genius," Hunyo said, pleased with herself. "Whether you're a genius or not, I don't know, but you were definitely first this time. You broke all the records." The formation spirit said, "You can choose a treasure as a reward." Ling Han was quick on his feet and said, Nyo, ask him for 9 dragons tyrant body art." "Okay." Hunyo agreed in clear and loud voice. "Nyo wants 9 dragons tyrant body art, give it to Ling Han." The formation spirit glanced at Ling Han, and then said to Hunyo, "Such a precious chance, you're giving it others?" "Nyo's just that willful," Hunyo said, not caring at all, with hands on her hips. The formation spirit was speechless, throwing a light ball towards Ling Han, and said, "You're lucky, otherwise it would be impossible to obtain this part of the art with your record." Ling Han laughed and pressed the ball of light on his forehead. Instantly, countless flashes of light entered his consciousness, combining with the previous 9 dragons' tyrant body art. Now, if he cultivated it to the extreme, his physical body could reach the strength of 6 true dragons. However, Ling Han was the second place only for now. The second stage's test would go on for an entire day. It was possible that someone had just arrived and began the test, so his record would be confirmed after this day was over. People walked out one after another. These formations weren't too difficult, not enough to stump true geniuses. Resolving the formation was only a matter of time. A day soon passed. Ling Han's place remained as the second as expected, while third place was actually Lin Xiangqin. Didn't expect it, huh? This lady's breasts may be big, but her brain is also quick. This girl winked at Ling Han and stuck out her majestic chest, still acting provocatively. Ling Han could pick 3 types of medicinal pills, which made him gloomy. What medicinal pill couldn't he refine? He'd rather receive a book on the essence of formations. He bargained with the formation spirit to exchange for other rewards, but was coldly rejected. How stubborn, he complained inwardly. Chapter 496, Floating Stone Steps. Chapter 496, Floating Stone Steps. Reverie _ Although he didn't like medicinal pills as a reward, he wouldn't waste the chance and so picked a pill. The tier of the 3 pills were actually not low, and quite coincidentally, among these pills, one was the Hidden Tiger Heavenly Luck pill, so Ling Han picked that one. The other 2 were used to assist in breaking through a tier heaven tier, but Ling Han didn't need it, and secondly, he could also refine it, so he skipped those. Anyway, when the people by his side reached the deity transformation tier, he shouldn't lack the ingredients to refine such pills. This was also a reward for Zhu Xian Air. There's one last test ahead. Those who can make it there in 10 days will have qualified to take the test, the formation spirit went on. Every person that passed through the formation received a reward, but other than the top 3, the rewards were hardly as impressive. Everyone departed, and even those who hadn't passed through the formation were let out. This didn't affect their qualifications to head towards the 3rd stage. The key was whether or not they could reach the 3rd stage. Similar to the forest that led to the 2nd stage, there were terrifying beasts keeping watch on the way, eliminating a portion of people. The 5 of them also set out, and since 2 parts of 9 Dragons' Tyrant body art were acquired, Ling Han obviously wanted to obtain the last part even more, forming the complete art. While he hastened on the road, he began to study the art. Different from normal arts, the 9 Dragons' Tyrant body art didn't cultivate origin power. It completely excavated the potential of the human body, increasing the power of blood, flesh, veins, and muscles, and at last, breaking through the limit to become a god in flesh. To cultivate this art was rather easy. First, eat as much worldly treasures and such tonic things as possible, and second, cultivate for all one was worth, squeezing out one's own physical limits. This required a strong physique, or else one wouldn't be able to maintain such terrifying physical power. Just like a man of clay, even if its punch had over 10,000 pounds of force, if it smashed into a wall, the wall might shatter, but the man of clay itself would also collapse. However, if it were a golem, then a punch would definitely break the wall, and the golem itself would be fine. For Ling Han, the 9 Dragons' Tyrant body art was like it was tailor-made for him, because he cultivated indestructible heaven scroll, and the toughness of his physique was comparable to rare metals of the same tier. If he were to advance one more step to diamond tier, then it would be even more terrifying. With a strong physique, he would get twice the result by doing half the work when cultivating this art. However, now he didn't have the time to cultivate, because they were hurrying on the road. The formation spirit actually gave them 10 days this time, meaning that the road would be extremely long or filled with danger, and they would stumble and experience numerous difficulties before reaching the end. The flatlands soon disappeared, and there was no road ahead. Instead, there were stones floating in midair, layering higher and higher until the end of the skies. The 3rd stage, could it be in the sky? It certainly seems so. Is this the ladder to heaven? Haha, this counts as a ladder. Everyone felt that this stage was not a test at all, because flower blossom tier warriors could fly, and even if they couldn't fly to the top in one go, there were floating stones on the way for them to stop to rest. Let's try it out. Ling Han leapt up, but his expression changed immediately. With this leap, he discovered the gravity here was unusually strong. Originally, he could jump at least several hundred feet, but now it was hardly 5 feet. Fortunately, he still jumped onto that floating stone. The strange thing was that when he was on the floating stone, the gravity returned to normal and no additional weight came upon him. Apparently, the gravity existed to stop flower blossom tier warriors from flying, as well as to increase their difficulty in advancing. This should also vary according to tier, or else it would lose meaning. All of you come up, this road probably won't be so easy to walk, he said. This was a bit like the city gate of the first stage, but the obstructive force was layered, while the gravity here was terrifying. The key was that the formation spirit said it would suffice to arrive within 10 days. What did this mean? The road was damn long. Therefore, this tested endurance and willpower. Otherwise, under such a strong gravitational environment, who could maintain their pace for 10 days' time? Everyone jumped up one after another. Some people actually didn't jump high enough and had to jump again, and this was only the first layer of floating stones. The end of the rows of floating stone steps couldn't be seen, so no one knew how far the road led. If there were an end, then everyone would at least have a goal to strive for in their minds. But the situation before their eyes, a road without end and moving forward, was extremely difficult. This could very easily make people disheartened and lose tenacity. Everyone began to move forward. At the start, everyone was fierce, jumping over the floating steps one after the other, but only after 10 minutes, their speed became slower and slower, with sweat trickling down their backs. Ling Han was still relaxed. He could actually store Lu Yutong and the others into the Black Tower and bring them to the top, but he didn't do so, because as he saw it, this was great for improving oneself. Those who could walk to the end in 10 days, regardless of martial arts talent, would at least prove that they possessed a heart to never back down. This was an indispensable quality on the road to the peak of martial arts. So, Ling Han didn't wait for the others and employed his movement arts, climbing upwards rapidly. Flower blossom tier cultivators could only jump step by step here too. Moreover, the higher the tier, the greater the gravitational force one endured, losing their advantage. The test here was more about willpower than cultivation. Ling Han soon left everyone behind, and the only one who kept up with him was Hunyeo. This little girl's speed was also clearly restricted, but she was still fast, at least no slower than Ling Han. Jumping continuously, and jumping until exhaustion. They rested on the floating rocks, meditating and absorbing spiritual chi to recover. This was greatly beneficial in increasing one's cultivation. Ling Han had eaten many great things, and the time was too short for many of them to show their effects, accumulating within his body. Now his body was operating an excess burden, which finally unleashed the effects. After completing cultivation, Ling Han began to cultivate the 9-Dragon Tyrant Body Art. This could only be cultivated 1 hour each day and no more. Going beyond the limit would instead harm the body. Also, during the cultivation process, blood, flesh, veins, and bones would absorb large amounts of energy and essence. If there weren't enough world treasures to keep up, then one would only overdraw oneself. Ling Han cultivated now because the essences of the treasured medicine accumulated within the body were all released through intense exercise. If he didn't cultivate the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art now, it would truly be a great waste. He assumed a strange posture, and instantly, the bones all over his body crackled. He almost bent himself into a curve, and qi and blood instantly couldn't circulate normally. It was so painful that he almost spurted out blood. The 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art's initial stage had a total of 12 styles of such postures. Before acquiring the second portion of the art, there were only 6 styles, and apparently, the completed Tyrant Body Art probably had 18 styles. Chapter 497, Refining the Body. Chapter 497, Refining the Body. Reverie _ A minute later, Ling Han changed to the second posture. The bones in his body crackled again, as if stir-frying soybeans. Even though he already completed the cultivation of the iron sheet tier, and the hardness of his bones was comparable to rare metals of the same tier, he still felt like his bones were about to break. Since he was the one who forcibly assumed such a posture, it was equivalent to fighting against himself. So even if it were a rare metal of the same tier, divine metal would also break. Under this strange posture, his blood, flesh, and bones were as if they'd each possessed life, frantically absorbing the accumulated energy and turning it into his power. Yet, it wasn't origin power, but brute force of his physical body. The muscles definitely didn't bulge, but he still felt that each cell was filled with vitality and that he could crush a lofty mountain with a slight burst. This was obviously an illusion. He had just cultivated the body art, so it couldn't possibly have such a surprising effect already. However, once he truly completed the cultivation and became a god in flesh, then one punch would have the terrifying power of 9 true dragons. Ling Han changed to the third pose and ka. His bones continued to crackle. He coughed out blood, but it was actually black with some impurities inside, making him struck dumb with amazement. The effects were too obvious. The sweat on his body was like rain, and his hair was all wet. With the dripping sounds of sweat, the hot air rose and formed puffs of white steam. Hunyo found it interesting and began to mimic his posture. Ow, ow, ow. The little girl cried incessantly, slumping onto the ground, and said with a wry face, "Not fun. Not fun at all." Ling Han wanted to laugh, so this little monster-like girl wasn't freakish and surprising in all aspects. 12 minutes later, he assumed every single position once. A puddle of sweat had already formed over his body, was completely drenched. He changed postures again and returned to the first style, doing it for enough time. His body was continuously absorbing the energy essences within his body, and quite strangely, when he activated the 5 elements heaven-grade skill, these essences turned into origin power, stored inside his Dantian and spiritual ocean. Whereas now, it was absorbed by the cells everywhere, turning into pure brute force. Origin power or brute force, what was the difference? Ling Han had heard that some living spirits were born enormous, and their body size at maturity was even that of a city. They didn't need to cultivate it all as a punch, and a kick could disintegrate a tall mountain. Like humans to ants. From the perspective of ants, how many levels did it need to cultivate before being able to fend against a human's brute force? 9 dragons' tyrant body art might be created by some living spirits that were born gigantic and focused on cultivation of the body, becoming gods in flesh. Ling Han held down the distracting thoughts and devoted his whole mind to guiding the blood, flesh, veins, and bones and absorbing the drifting energy, turning it into his brute force. The things he ate these past few days were really too many, so the power converted from them was also very scary, making him feel as if would burst from being too full as his entire body was swelling. An hour later, Ling Han stopped and sat abruptly onto the ground, gasping for breath. This was truly exhausting, but also had an indescribable comfort, forming a strange feeling. After sitting for a while, he entered the Black Tower, took a shower, changed into new clothes, and then tested his brute force. It was comparable to the element gathering tier. God, he only cultivated it for an hour and crossed right over a martial arts tier. Ling Han nodded to himself. This was because he stood at a different height. Now he was at the spiritual pedestal tier and ate many tonic things, and once these things evaporated, was it still not enough for a normal person to cross the body refining tier immediately? Contrarily, if you let a body refining tier cultivator eat so many tonic things, they die from being too full. However, the start is quick because I'm already at the spiritual pedestal tier, and the following progress probably wouldn't be so fast, Ling Han said to himself, cracking a smile. Body art would be one of his trump cards. In the future, if anyone thought that he was at the end of the rope, but he suddenly broke out with terrifying brute force, he could turn the tables with one move. He exited the Black Tower and set a fire as he began to boil things with Hunyo. Now he had one more area of expense, craving for food more and more. In the future, the Black Tower has to foster more beasts, Ling Han said. Otherwise, it really would be impossible to sustain his, and Hunyo's stomachs. Yes, yes. Hunyo expressed great approval, staring at Ling Han while drooling. That egg can't be eaten, Ling Han hurriedly said. The little girl still refused to give up her evil intentions, not forgetting about the azure flame vulture's egg. Humph, stingy. Hunyo pouted, but when the food finished cooking, she immediately began eating delightfully. When they were about to finish eating, they saw someone climb up arduously. It was Shen Zhongchun. He never would have thought that the one charging at third place wouldn't be a flower blossom tier from the older generation and wouldn't be a top figure of the prodigy role in their prime, but instead the white-robed sword king who charged into 8th place this year. Ling Han nodded. The third stage's test was not about strength, of course. If it were monsters like Ling Han and Hunyo who were undoubtedly at the cultivation of the 2nd and 3rd layer spiritual pedestal tier, but had the power comparable to the 9th layer, then that would be another matter. As a whole, this stage tested people's tenacity. Spiritual pedestal tier warriors had already opened up a spiritual ocean, having continuous flow of origin power and established spiritual pedestals, which could connect with the heavens. On a climb like this, they definitely couldn't be exhausted. However, the gravitational force was too strong and very easily made people feel weary, so who was faster and who was slower was the sole matter of each person's determination. If you walked a few steps and had to rest, then how could you possibly be fast? This swordsman's eyes were like swords, flickering with tenacity and resolution. He was obviously not going to stop until he reached the end. His body was just like Ling Han's previously, full of sweat, with hair completely soaked. But a man shedding sweat wouldn't give people the feeling of disorderliness, but rather limitless masculinity. Men should be like so. Ling Han gave up on the idea of inviting him over for a meal. Shin Zhongchen was squeezing his determination to the limits, and it was very possible he would gain explosive improvement, rocketing in cultivation or having a great breakthrough on the path of the sword. Hunyo, we can't be lazy anymore. Let's charge to the top in one go, he said. Charge. Hunyo raised her small fist. The two started climbing again. Their power far surpassed their tiers, and since this place delimited the gravitational power everyone endured by tier, their speed was ridiculously fast, surpassing Shinzhong Chun in a short while. Ling Han, however, sighed. He was too relaxed, so relaxed that he couldn't push his own limits, which then would have no effect of tempering how truly unfortunate. Conversely, it was also because he had already pushed the limits beyond this level that he could be so relaxed now, having already gone through the process. With this thought, he felt balanced inside. Chapter 498, 3 Beast Phenomenon. Chapter 498, 3 Beast Phenomenon. Reverie _ For others, this heaven ascending ladder was a great test, but for these two monsters, Ling Han and Hunyo, it was only slightly strenuous, absolutely unable to push them beyond their limits. Thus, Ling Han soon lost interest, and after climbing for one day, he stopped to cultivate origin power, then increased his brute force. Instead, cultivating the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art was extremely painful as each posture wasn't something normal people could do, each time making him hack out blood. No wonder he had to eat tonic things, or else he would die hacking out blood every day like this, then to hell with cultivation. Each time Ling Han finished cultivating and began eating meat with Hunyo, he would see the white-robed Sword King catch up. With each passing day, his expression didn't falter a single bit, and his gaze even became brighter. Ling Han could see that something had been planted inside the heart of this swordsman, and once it budded, it would produce a surprising change. This was Shun Zhongcheng's opportunity. After 9 whole days, Ling Han and Hunyo finally climbed to the end of the heaven-ascending ladder, and this place was actually a large stretch of land, indescribably strange. It was as if it was originally a complete piece of land that was forcibly broken off by a mighty being, a part placed on top and a part placed on bottom, forming a massive stairway. Suddenly, an unusual surge transmitted from below and emitted an astounding might. The presence surged like the tide. What? Someone had a breakthrough, and it's to the flower blossom tier. Ling Han was astounded. In another short while, the the surge rose again. A second person is breaking through to the flower blossom tier. Ling Han was even more surprised. From the spiritual pedestal tier to the flower blossom tier, this was a process of transcending mortals. And although flower blossom tier beings were far from beings called gods, flower blossom tier creatures could fly and survive just from absorbing spiritual chi without eating, something mortals could not compare with. Thus, crossing this step was extremely arduous, and the commotion associated with it was also ridiculous large. In half a day, Ling Han actually felt the surge of 7 breakthroughs to the flower blossom tier, and it definitely wasn't the same person charging 7 times consecutively because of failure. It should have been those prodigies who were stuck at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier and were originally only a step away from the flower blossom tier. Limited by the difficulty of crossing into the flower blossom tier, they had been stalled in taking this step. But here, they were forced to their limits and even surpassed them. This was a type of refinement of willpower that allowed people to enter the state of becoming one with heaven and earth extremely easily, completely seeing through oneself and comprehending instantly, then taking the key step. No wonder so many people wanted to come in. Even if they couldn't obtain any treasures, this toughening experience alone was worth it. Of course, the 7 could break through also because their accumulation at the spiritual pedestal tier was deep enough, or else those who just crossed into the 9th layer of the pedestal tier and wanted to break through to the flower blossom tier through this walk would also succeed. That would just be a joke. This was only supplementary, having a boosting effect. The key was still oneself. 7 people wasn't the end. On the afternoon of the 10th day, another 3 people began breaking through to the flower blossom tier one after another. Obviously, these 10 people couldn't make it here in the 10 days, because breaking through to the flower blossom tier would require at least 10 days' time. When they completed the breakthrough, the limit of 1 month would come, and all would have to leave the mystery realm. The white-robed Sword King was the third to arrive, and when he crossed the last step, he sat down cross-legged. Spiritual Yi surged and almost visibly poured into his body as if several shapeless hands were pulling the spiritual chi. Looking closely, the spiritual chi turned into 3 fierce beasts, leaping at Shun Zhongchen's body at 3 different angles. What? 3 beasts phenomenon? Ling Han was astounded. The legend is actually real. So it turns out that completely surpassing oneself will certainly bring forth the reaction of a mysterious power in heaven and earth. It's said that the bigger the number of spiritual beasts one can draw forth, the bigger the number of small tiers one will break through at the end. Now, Shun Zhongchen has really profited greatly. Spiritual chi came surging and continued to turn into the shape of beasts. 3 beasts after another leapt towards Shun Zhongchen and continuously increased his cultivation. In the matter of half an hour, powerful energy burst out from Shun Zhongchen's body. He opened his eyes suddenly. His eyes were as bright as 2 small suns, but the radiance immediately faded, leaving his eyes still filled with intimidation and as if sharp swords. The 5th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. His cultivation grew drastically by 3 small tiers as expected. Ling Han was awfully envious. Why did he have to be so strong? Strong to the point that the test here couldn't force him to his limits. The 4th person to arrive was actually Can Yi. His killing intent overflowed from his body. He held a saber in his right hand, and a terrifying, ominous glare shot from his eyes, as fearless as if he wouldn't hesitate to strike with his saber to cut apart a shattering void-tier elite should one appear before him now. This refinement of willpower finally unleashed his killing intent completely. Can Yi also sat down immediately, and Hong, spiritual chi swirled, also forming 3 foreign beasts that surged into his body. Sigh, are they all trying to anger me? Ling Han shook his head, but also revealed a smile. Through this tempering, Can Yi could really count it as treading the road of elites, and his achievements in the future would be unlimited. In Rain Country, he had had a feeling that Can Yi would become the 2nd Setting Sun Saber Emperor in the future, but now this feeling turned into conviction. As long as Can Yi could stay alive and keep battling on, he would become such an elite. Ling Han stroked his chin. Should he let Can Yi develop on his own? Following beside him and always receiving his protection, Can Yi would never become a true elite, but only a powerful subordinate. People arrived in succession, but there were extremely few of them. Moreover, Yukuan Luan and figures near the top of the prodigy roll from the previous generation or the 2 generations before could not be seen, probably all being those 10 charging to the flower blossom tier. Ling Han thought so shortly and threw that train of thought aside. He longed to pass the 3rd stage and obtain the complete 9 Dragons Tyrant body art. When this day ended, only 14 people passed. Lu Yutong and Yu Kaiyu still didn't come up. Apparently, their willpower was not firm enough or freakish, so to speak. Shun Zhongqian spent over 9 days to arrive, and even drew forth the 3 beasts phenomenon. It was enough to see how challenging this was. So, it was also quite normal for them not to have arrived. The formation spirit appeared, swept the 14 people with its gaze, and said, "The 3rd stage's test is pill refining skill. There is no definite standard. I'll make the judgment." Instantly, 13 of the 14 people gave up. Why? Esset. None of them were alchemists, so to hell with the test. The formation spirit's expression was somewhat doubtful, staring at Ling Han as it said, "You're also an alchemist? You're actually the only alchemist here?" Truly not a coincidence. Ling Han sighed intentionally. The formation spirit thought shortly and said, "Even if it's only you, if the level of the pill you refine is not up to par, you still won't get any good rewards." Was it underestimating the Grandmaster of Alchemy? Chapter 499, Completing the God Art. Chapter 499, Completing the God Art. Reverie _ Hurry up and start. Ling Han was unable to wait, as if he already saw the last part of the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art waving at him. "Brat, you're too arrogant." Even the formation spirit argued needlessly. Ling Han laughed loudly and entered the building ahead. Xiao, his figure swayed and appeared in a medicinal room with walls and the surroundings, set with rows of shelves, on which were all sorts of medicinal ingredients, while the medicinal furnace was in the middle. He sensed it momentarily well. His divine sense was extracted again. Ling Han couldn't help but exclaim what a pity it was. The medicinal ingredients here were at least of the 9th tier, and he wanted to bring out the medicinal pill after refining it. Never would he have thought that it was just a mental space, and all was just an illusion. Here, you don't have to worry about the limit of the fire's temperature. What ingredients you want to refine will all be on the shelves, and if it's not there, tell me and I'll bring it for you. The formation spirit also appeared. Ling Han couldn't help but ask, "What tier of medicinal pill do I have to refine to acquire the last part of the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art?" The formation spirit just wanted to roll its eyes. "You haven't even started refining and already set your eyes on the prize? You're that confident?" It paused and said, "Based on your age, at least high-level Earth grade to qualify, and it also depends on the quality of the pill formed." "Why didn't you say earlier?" Shwa shwa shwa. Ling Han already picked out medicine from the shelves, extraordinarily fast. "For insurance's sake, I'll refine low-level heaven grades, Blue Rainbow Clear Soul Pill." The corner of the formation spirit's mouth clearly twitched. "Heaven-grade medicinal pill? You sure talk big." However, Ling Han already started, both hands turning naturally and smoothly, selecting, cleaning, then refining, and at last opening the furnace to refine the pill. The entire process was done in one go, indescribably smooth and easy. The formation spirit's mouth slowly opened up and became a circle in the end, apparently overly shocked. How could there be such a freak in this world? Amazing talent in martial arts and outstanding performance in formations, and at last, even stunningly peerless in alchemy. Such an all-round freak would really appear in this world. Refining a heaven-grade medicinal pill took a while because only after 3 days and 3 nights did Ling Han wrap up, feeling an intense weariness. After all, it was a heaven-grade medicinal pill, and his current divine senses strength was too weak, unable to endure refining more than 1 furnace of pills. The formation spirit didn't even look at the pill formed. This was all an illusion that changed within its formation. It looked at Ling Han's every step of pill raining and naturally knew whether the medicinal pill was successfully refined and how many stars it was. Take it, take it." The formation spirit threw a ball of light. Needless to say, this was definitely the last portion of the Nine Dragons Tyrant body art. Ling Han hurriedly caught the ball of light and pressed it on his forehead. As expected, the Nine Dragons Tyrant body art changed again, finally complete. Kid, you're qualified to become an eternal disciple of the 12 palaces. So, under what palace do you want to become a disciple? The formation spirit suddenly asked. Ling Han smiled and said, send my divine sense back to my body first. I'll show you something, but don't let anyone else know. Tiske, acting all mysterious. The formation spirited snorted, yet acted accordingly. Ling Han's divine sense returned. He was still inside the building but no longer in the hermetic stone room. He also re-established the connection with the Black Tower. He took out the key of the Sagittarius Palace, swaying it in his hand. Huh, you actually have the key to open the Sagittarius Palace, the formation spirit cried out. Why didn't you take it out earlier? If I took it out earlier, how could I have obtained Nine Dragons Tyrant body art? Ling Han replied with a question. Damn brat, the formation spirit muttered, and suddenly laughed gloatingly. To tell you an unfortunate news, it's not the first time the Sagittarius Palace has been opened, so the treasures inside the palace have already been cleaned out, leaving only two things that can't be taken out. Sht. Haha. The formation spirit laughed loudly. It had been annoyed at Ling Han for a long time, and now being able to discuss Ling Han once instantly made it feel really pleased. It paused, then went on, however, the things of true value in the Sagittarius Palace are those two things that can't be taken away. What are they? Ling Han asked just in case. A mystical power and a set of coordinates, the formation spirit said. A mystical power? Ling Han was happy. This was a great thing, but what the heck was the coordinate? He asked, coordinates of what? In former years, Heavenly River King once discovered an astounding God's depository, and just taking a few things allowed him to be all-powerful in the Great Brahmas. These coordinates are the location of the God's depository, the formation spirit answered. Ling Han suddenly realized that what Tian Zhao wanted to take away was definitely those coordinates. These coordinates are only in the Sagittarius Palace? Ling Han asked again. No, in all 12 palaces. Being able to inherit the legacy of the 12 palaces, one is naturally qualified to receive Heavenly River King's remaining treasures, the formation spirit said. Right, what sort of a place is the Great Brahmas? Ling Han asked. The formation spirit rolled its eyes and said, I'm only the core of this formation, not a know-it-all, so how should I know? Damn, scoffed at by a formation spirit. Ling Han pondered and said, is there anyone else who brought a key in this time? What? You guessed even that? The formation spirit was astounded. Before you, there certainly was a kid who brought a key over in a rush and didn't attend the tests earlier. Is he called Wen Yijian? Ling Han felt apprehensive. That's right. As expected, Wen Yijian didn't coincidentally encounter the opening of the 12 Skies Mystery Realm and probably paid close attention to North Region's situation ever since he'd obtained the key. Which palace did he open? Scorpio Palace. Ling Han thought shortly and said, since the Sagittarius Palace has already been opened, has that God's depository been taken away? No. The formation spirit shook its head, returned Ling Han the key, and said, this is not only the key to open the Sagittarius Palace, but also the authenticating object to enter the God's depository. There lie the restrictions set by Heavenly River King, and without a key, you can't enter at all. However, the key will disappear after one use. Since it's appeared again, it means that previous possessor didn't enter the God's depository. So that was how matters stood. After you leave here, I'll take you to Sagittarius Palace, the formation spirit continued. All right. Ling Han went out, and quite a few people's gazes immediately targeted him. Everyone knew that Ling Han was a heaven-grade alchemist, and he not only passed this stage, but also definitely acquired an extremely good record. He must have obtained surprising treasures. Ao Feng and the other Flower Blossom tier warriors revealed killing intent in their eyes. If not for fear of the formation spirit, they definitely would attack and seize it. You, You. The formation spirit pointed at those that arrived within 10 days. You guys all qualify to become an external disciple of the 12 palaces. Those interested, follow me. The 13 people hurriedly follow Ed and they come in for opportunities. Hunyo didn't care much. She simply followed Ling Han. Chapter 500, Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow. Chapter 500, Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow. Reverie _ The formation spirit brought them into the room and performed a ceremony, praying in front of a few memorial tablets. They were now foreign disciples of the 12 palaces, and each person would be imparted an art and a skill. However, neither could be imparted to others. Otherwise, it would trigger some sort of restriction and wipe out their souls. Hunyo wouldn't possibly let others leave a restriction in her mind. Ling Han could inherit Sagittarius Palace. His status would soon be high as he could almost be called one of the masters of the mystery realm. Naturally, he wouldn't be offered an art or skill. After everyone received the legacy, they left one by one. All right, the test is all over. Go wherever you need to. There's still 10 days' time to cultivate here, and when the time comes, I'll send you all out, the formation spirit said. Hearing this, everyone naturally dispersed, and as to whether they truly left, only they themselves would know. Since they had their eyes on Ling Han, the formation spirit snorted. It didn't care about the others, but Ling Han was now the master of Sagittarius Palace, so how could it allow anyone to commit a crime in front of its eyes? It grabbed onto Ling Han's shoulder, and Zhao both disappeared without a trace. Where's he? Those who were hidden in the dark charged out, but Ling Han and the formation spirit were nowhere to be found. Ling Han clearly already received the reward, so why is the formation spirit still with him? Someone said in ponder. Could it be? Could it be? The stolen key from the Zhang family is on him, everyone cried out. The Zhang family had a key of the mystery realm and originally planned to invite a groom through martial arts competition, taking in the strongest son-in-law and giving out a treasure. However, the key was robbed during the martial arts contest, and even a spiritual infant tier elite stepping in couldn't retrieve it. Everyone believed that Ronghuan Xian stole the key, but now, the thousand-corpse Sect disciple was obviously still at the bottom, not even finished with climbing the stone steps. Could what Ronghuan Xian said be true, that his key was truly robbed? After entering the mystery realm, Ronghuan Xian said that the key wasn't on him, but how could anyone believe that? However, now it looked like that guy might not have lied, and the key was actually obtained by Ling Han. Instantly, everyone's gaze fell on Qin Yi and Hunyo. What do you guys want? Don't even think about fight for food with Nyo. Hunyo immediately said fiercely, hiding the dried meat behind her back. Take them down and use them to threaten Ling Han afterwards. Force him to hand over the treasures. Everyone said one after another. As Ling Han's figure flashed, he already arrived at a square. In the surroundings of the square were 12 majestic and imposing palaces, but each palace's door was tightly shut. Before each palace was a monument. There was a white sheep, a golden cow, Pisces, all were different. Here, the Sagittarius Palace is there. You can enter through the palace door using the key, the formation spirit said, and then was slightly startled, revealing a strange expression as it said, someone is going to harm to your companions. Ling Han frowned and said, bring me back? No need. I'll protect them for you, the formation spirit said smilingly, and its figure flashed and disappeared at once. With the formation spirit's protection, they should be absolutely safe. Even if that superbug king came, it probably could still block it. Ling Han took key to the Sagittarius Palace's entrance. This key wasn't used to open the palace doors, but to let the palace doors become void, allowing him to pass through. As expected, the palace was empty, almost without a thing. It truly was emptied out. Ling Han sighed. Which senior was so virtueless and left not even a bit for him? Should he dig up that person's ancestor's grave in the future? Full of evil intentions, he thought for a while, then set his gaze on a sculpture within the palace. It was a martial artist shooting an arrow at the sky, and though it was simply a sculpture, it stunned Ling Han greatly. It was as if it gently let its finger loose. The raging arrow would shoot down even the sun in the sky. Mystical power. This is an archery technique. Ling Han revealed an exhilarated look. Wait, if this archery technique was coordinated with the Eye of Truth, what sort of effect would it have? He felt a rush of excitement. The two mystical powers layered on together was definitely not 1 + 1 = 2, but probably far surpassing that. Regardless of all this, I have to obtain this mystical power first. Ling Han came before the sculpture and pressed his hand onto it. Instantly, his consciousness shined. An extremely powerful being stood in the starry skies and shot down stars in the skies, terrifyingly stunning. Ling Han only felt like his head was about to split. This person's presence was too powerful. Even if he only saw a few scenes of the person's display in former years, it made his head feel like it was about to explode. This was too great of an impact on his divine sense. He forcibly endured, but blood still oozed out from his ears, nose, and mouth. This impact was too frightening. So that's how it is. Ling Han muttered continuously. Unlike the Eye of Truth, when he only received a broken eyeball and all had to be discovered on his own, an elite's image appeared to display the power for him, explaining things in great detail. Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow. This was the mystical power's name. At its extreme, it could extract a star as an arrow, killing a true dragon. I acquired 9 dragons tyrant body art, and at its extreme I can possess the power of 9 true dragons. Now, this is a dragon annihilation arrow. Is this implying I annihilate myself? Ling Han laughed in spite of himself. Damn, it's obviously the Sagittarius Palace, yet it doesn't even leave me a bow. But after crossing into the flower blossom tier, I can use my body as a bow and extract spiritual chi from heaven and earth as an arrow. Even without a treasured bow, it can still unleash extremely powerful might. Besides, I also cultivate body art concurrently, and on top of brute force, an arrow's might would definitely be astounding. This way, I'll have one more ranged attack method. Ling Han sat cross-legged and focused on extracting the power of the legacy within the sculpture. He only had 10 days or so, and after a month's time was up, he would also be thrown out of the mystery realm. So, he couldn't waste time. And if he didn't grasp this mystical power, he would have to come back in 100 years. He didn't rest and kept absorbing the legacy within the sculpture, doing everything possible to turn it into his own comprehension. Moreover, there certainly was a set of coordinates inside this sculpture, but it was meaningless now since that was in the Great Brahmas, which was probably an area in the God realm anyway. While absorbing the legacy, the sculpture was as if fusing with him, replacing his spirit base and absorbing spiritual chi continuously. Needless for him to convert it, it naturally converted into origin power to construct the spiritual pedestal. The spirit chi here was so abundant here, so Ling Han's cultivation was literally moved up a step each day, surprisingly fast. This sculpture was actually Sagittarius Palace's most valuable treasure. Days went by. Ling Han sat still like an old monk, completely losing sense of time. His body trembled and appeared inside a valley, with the dazzling sun shining high above. Ling Han was first startled and then returned to his senses. So, he'd already exited the mystery realm and returned to North Region. Yin Tian Zhao. His eyes shot a chilling glare. Yin Tian Zhao stood 10 feet away from him. Chapter 501. Killing Yin Tian Zhao. Chapter 501. Killing Yin Tian Zhao. Reverie _ Yin Tian Zhao sneered, Ling Han, I'll leave that thing in your hands and take it back in the future. You still have a future? Ling Han's killing intent erupted, charging right out. You'll die today. Haha, you're talking a fool's talk? Yin Tian Zhao counterattacked, yet immediately let out a cry in surprise. You actually reached the 8th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier? He snorted again that was still infinitely far from the flower blossom tier. Xiao. The people that entered the mystery realm appeared one by one. Yu Kuan Luan, Bai He Shun, and other well-known figures from on the older generation's prodigy roll all crossed into the flower blossom tier. They spurred with long accumulation, finally crossing the most arduous step with the Mystery Realm's help. Entering the Flower Blossom tier meant transcending the mortal body, so every one of them was soared with confidence, an ineffable vigor. They also looked at Ling Han. Previously, when the Zhang family looked for a groom, they were all defeated by Ling Han and Tian Zhao. Now that they crossed into the Flower Blossom tier, it was another shuffle of the cards. Especially Ling Han that hadn't crossed into the Flower Blossom tier, having no qualifications to be placed on par with them at all. Small tower, give me a power boost, Ling Han said inwardly. Although power boosting at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier would be the most profitable, he only had one thought now, and that was to kill Tian Zhao, ending the karma that he sowed. Hong, Ling Han's presence skyrocketed, instantly broke through to the Flower Blossom tier, and then charged all the way up to the 8th layer of the Flower Blossom tier. All the Flower Blossom tier elites casted a sidelong glance towards Ling Han. What happened? How was it possible that his tier instantly underwent such a terrifying change? Especially Yukuan Luin, who was originally filled with confidence, wanting to battle Ling Han to wash away the humiliation of him retreating without a fight with this a rude awakening. The gloominess in his heart could be imagined. Tian Zhao's expression instinctively turned stern. Ling Han's battle prowess was too strong, and he'd experienced it before. Under the circumstances that he was ahead in tier, the two were tied, but now Ling Han's tier was advantageous, and not just by a bit. This fight was definitely going to be hard. Die! Ling Han swung his sword, and Hong, 10 flashes of sword chi streaked. Tian Zhao struck back. His control of power reached the acme of perfection and could utilize 1%'s power as 10%'s power. After all, he could be seen as a special type of god, and couldn't possibly be ordinary. However, Ling Han was way too extraordinary. As the demon birth sword came slashing, the power of it was frightening, and the dazzling sword light enveloped him completely. On top of the absolute advantage in power, he fell into a disadvantageous position. Haha, you only forcibly increased your power to the Flower Blossom tier, and aren't truly at the Flower Blossom tier. Tian Zhao was unquestionably sharp, immediately seeing through Ling Han's weak point. What was the most powerful about the Flower Blossom tier beings? They could invoke heaven and earth's spiritual chi in the surroundings to strengthen themselves and turn 1-fold's attack into 10-fold, and even 100-fold. Ling Han only possessed the power of the 8th layer of the Flower Blossom tier, and couldn't utilize heaven and earth's spiritual chi. This was the shortcoming of his tier. However, the difference of each small tier in the Flower Blossom tier was a great gap in power, so the 8th layer of the Flower Blossom tier was enough to make up for 10 times and even 100 times the amplification effect of heaven and earth's spiritual chi, allowing Ling Han to still have the advantage. However, such an advantage wasn't as obvious as the 8th layer against the 1st layer. It was at most the 2nd layer against the 1st layer. Tian Zhao was fearless, exchanging blows with Ling Han. His grasp over power was too powerful, soon stabilizing the situation. However, with the sharpness of the demon birth sword, he still didn't dare to parry it head-on, remaining at a disadvantage. This already made the Flower Blossom tier elites looking pained in the jaws. These two people's battle prowess was at least Flower Blossom tier 6 stars, suppressing many veteran Flower Blossom tier warriors. Ling Han, you can't possibly kill me. Just stop and keep your life. When the time comes, I'll find you. Tian Zhao laughed loudly. What he meant by time was naturally when he crossed into the Shattering Void tier, having the qualification to shatter the void to become God. When he got the coordinates and returned to the Great Brahmas, he'd be able to open the God's treasure trove discovered by Heavenly River King. There won't be a future, you must die today, Ling Han said coldly. He had been accumulating strength, and now mysterious 3000 was ready. With a sword thrust, it started turning into 1,000 flashes of sword light. Tian Zhao's expression changed drastically. This strike was too powerful, and he didn't dare to parry it head-on, immediately turning away to run. Flower Blossom tier creatures could fly, so he naturally flew into the sky and said, Ling Han, just you wait. No need to wait. Ling Han sheathed his sword and made a posture of drawing a bow. There was clearly no bow in his hand, but an arrow appeared out of thin air, formed exactly by heaven and earth's spiritual qi. He activated the Eye of Truth and glanced at Yin Tian Zhao's weak point. Xiao, a chilling flash of light shot out, ridiculously fast. Ah! Yin Tian Zhao screamed tragically. His left rib was shot. Green blood splattered, looking extremely strange. The left rib was his vulnerable spot and was penetrated by the arrow formed by spiritual qi. It instantly made the origin power in his body pour out and his figure staggered, sliding down from the sky. Ling Han chased wielding his sword, and when Yin Tian Zhao fell down, he unleashed another mysterious 3,000. Fear flickered in Yin Tian Zhao's eyes. At this moment, he truly felt that death was approaching. He didn't want to die, since he acquired a god's memory and had a 90% grasp of becoming a god in the future. Moreover, he still hadn't executed many maneuvers, and if he fought a life-and-death battle with Ling Han, it was uncertain who would emerge as the victor. But now, all was too late. 1,000 sword lights came piercing. It was Ling Han's strongest killer move. Yin Tian Zhao's vulnerable spot was injured, and falling from the sky, he had no way to evade. Under his survival instinct, he formed a seal with his hands and fired out a bunch of green nets, intertwining in front of him, stopping Ling Han as much as possible. Pu, 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 sword lights were like rain, instantly tearing apart the green nets. At least 500 sword lights poured down on Yin Tian Zhao's body as minced meat flew into the air continuously, turning him into a skeleton. Tong, tong, tong. Yin Tian Zhao stepped back as guts and other internal organs slid out. A sword mark also appeared on his head, showing a deep wound. Everyone shook their heads. Yin Tian Zhao's head was already crushed and he was struggling at death's door. He would die at most in a few more breaths. Yin Tian Zhao looked startlingly at Ling Han. His eyes already fell out, and now 2 black holes remained, particularly terrifying. He still couldn't believe that underestimating an enemy, or rather simply not wanting to fight with Ling Han head-on, would actually doom him eternally. When enemies met face-to-face on a narrow path, the courageous one even forgot such a simple thing. Ha 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 ha, Ling Han, now that I'm dead, don't think about getting off easily. He focused his mind and said loudly, this man received Zhang family's key and opened Sagittarius Palace, which is related to a god's treasure trove, a hidden treasure even gods would be stirred by. And he also has a treasure tool that can accommodate. Pooh! Ling Han's sword pierced through, thoroughly ending his life. Nevertheless, the seed had been sowed. Ling Han's gaze swept by, and he saw that countless people looked at him with eyes burning with desire, wishing they could devour him alive. God's Treasure Trove. Chapter 502, Dragged Under. Chapter 502, Dragged Under. Reverie _ Ling Han was fearless. He didn't refute it, because when involving things like treasure, many people would rather believe it existed. Moreover, a man's words were good when death was near, so Yin Tian Zhao's words were quite persuasive. His gaze swept by, and seeing Wen Yijian, he immediately waved and said, Junior Brother One. Pooh! Quite a few people spurted out why did Ling Han call Wen Yijian Junior Brother. The two were completely unrelated, right? Wen Yijian was also slightly startled, and said, not sure why Master Ling calls me Junior Brother. You and I both acquired the legacy of the 12 palaces. Of course we're fellow brothers. Ling Han laughed loudly. He had to drag Wen Yijian down to share some of his burden. He obviously didn't fear these flower blossom tier warriors, but if some spiritual infant tier ones came, it would be hard to deal with. Moreover, should the news spread, maybe shattering void tier elites would cross over regions no matter the cost? Then even if he had the Black Tower's protection, would he hide in a shell for his entire life? Wen Yijian was one from East region and ran over to North region for gains, so he had to share some of the pressure for him. He couldn't always be the one to take the burden, right? Hee, Master Ling sure loves telling jokes. Wen Yijian guffawed, looking like arguing was beneath him, yet thought that if they were fellow brothers, he would be the senior one. Ling Han snickered and said, Junior brother one acquired the Scorpio Palace's legacy. Do you dare make a heart's vow and bet to say that I'm wrong? A heart's vow was a vow to one's martial arts principles, and if this were faked, one wouldn't get struck by thunder, but it would heavily influence one's martial arts progression. It definitely couldn't be made recklessly. In the depths of Wen Yijian's eyes was a shred of annoyance, but his expression was extremely calm as he said indifferently, Why should I make a heart's vow? Senseless. Ling Han said no more, simply sweeping past everyone, and said, Me and Junior brother one are kings amongst martial artists, and have both crossed into the Flower Blossom tier. On top of this Flower Blossom tier King tier puppet, he summoned the rock spirit. If you want, come battle. Let's see how many people will spill their blood across the skies and leave their lives here. The corner of Wen Yijian's mouth twitched. Why did Ling Han include him again? This person didn't have ears at all and didn't listen to him speak or something. He was even more shocked. Receiving great benefits at the Scorpio Palace, he finally crossed into the Flower Blossom tier, but also acquired a mystic art which could hide his cultivation, which still looked like the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. So how did Ling Han see through with a single glance? What the hell of a mystic art was this? Don't care so much, take the two of them down. The Flower Blossom tier cultivators exchanged their opinions whether it was the legacy of the 12 palaces or the god's treasure trove. Both were of great significance. They would rather mistakenly kill and definitely not miss it. Not going to play with you North Region lunatics. When Yijian shot up abruptly, and the presence of the Flower Blossom tier spread out without reservation. With a step down was a flash of divine light, which burst forth as he left soaring through the sky. Wanna leave? Immediately, dozens of attacks came flying. Even if Wen Yijian's battle prowess was exceptional, he'd just broken through after all, couldn't possibly resist against such a bombardment of attacks, and was forced to land. Junior brother one, let's fight shoulder to shoulder. Ling Han laughed loudly. Wen Yijian was almost had a wry nose from anger. He could have left quietly, getting rich secretly, but Ling Han actually exposed him. Now, he was caught in a dangerous situation, making him extremely gloomy. Ling Han, when did I offend you? Why do you have to mess with me like this? He said coldly, not even calling him Master Ling. Ling Han laughed and said justifiably, Junior brother one, we're a family. Of course we should pull together at a time like this. Don't worry, I'll protect you. Protect your sister. I could have calmly left with a swagger. Wen Yijian grimaced as the situation in front of his eyes obviously wouldn't be as he wished. Fortunately, the spiritual infant tier warriors earlier had already gone back, or else, if those elites intervened, he would only be able to submit. Now, he could fight it out and break through the tight encirclement. Ling Han, this debt, I'll definitely make you pay for it, he swore as he stood together with Ling Han. The two in addition to the rock spirit formed a corner, back to back. Ha, that'll be in the future, Ling Han said unconcernedly. Lu Yutong and the others were tactful and didn't go forward. If they went up now, not only would they not be able to help Ling Han, they'd instead become a burden, making them feel unpleasant inside. Despite their fast progression speed, even fighting into North Region's prodigy role, they still couldn't share part of Ling Han's worries and burdens. Come, come, come. Who wants the treasure? Should attack? Ling Han laughed loudly. But, you guys have to think clearly, I'm also a heaven-grade alchemist. If you hurt single hair of mine, be careful lest the entire alchemist society will give you all a hard time. The faces of all the Flower Blossom Tier's elites twitched, thinking that Ling Han was exceedingly courageous, and at the same time a bit rascally. Fighting against the masses alone, this was obviously exceedingly courageous. However, he also put out his identity of a heaven-grade alchemist to threaten them, making them hold back when they attacked. Wasn't this extremely rascally? This wasn't a bit at all like an 18-year-old youngster, but rather mature and slick, just like an old fox. Take them down. Do your best not to hurt them. The Flower Blossom Tier warriors reached a consensus. A heaven-grade alchemist capacity was too heavy. Killing one secretly was all right, but killing Ling Han in public, that would definitely spread to the entire world. Whoever made the move would definitely be pushed out by the sect as a scapegoat to settle the fury of the world's alchemists. Oh, I didn't get the treasure, but I'd still have to give up my life for it. Woe would do such a thing? Thus, everyone hoped that someone else would kill Ling Han accidentally, but they themselves definitely wouldn't do it. Go. Over 20 flower blossom tier cultivators attacked together, their momentum vast and mighty. Ling Han, Wen Yijian, and the rock spirit roared, swinging their swords and pulling their fists, charging up one after another. Watching on the side, Hunyo stamped her feet, but it was currently a chaotic fight, and any random gust of wind was at flower blossom tier, filling the entire fray. No matter how fast she was, it was impossible to avoid the remaining shock waves of so many attacks. Going in head-on would only result in injury. Her battle instincts were too scary, immediately figuring out such a conclusion, which was why she didn't charge up hot-headedly. Nyo wants to become stronger. Nyo wants to become stronger. The little grill yelled loudly. Something inside her seemed to awaken, emitting a light hint of divine might. Mortals couldn't possibly sense it as it shot to the heavens, even breaking through this world. Ling Han now had the power of the 8th layer of the flower blossom tier, and on top of the former heaven tier's divine sense, he could still allocate heaven and earth's spirit chi. However, the amount was relatively smaller, so his actual cultivation was equivalent to the 3rd layer of the flower blossom tier. In addition to the various arts he grasped, his battle prowess rocketed to 10 stars, surpassing 7 stars. This was mainly because his power was forcibly boosted. Otherwise, if he truly crossed into the flower blossom tier, then even at 1st layer flower blossom tier, his battle prowess could also reach 10 stars. However, it was also enough now. Since 9 of his enemies had just completed their breakthrough, such as Yukuan Luan, Bai Shun, and other old figures on the prodigy roll, how many stars of battle prowess could they possibly have at that moment? Besides, Ao Feng and other even older figures of the prodigy roll had also broken through not long ago, about 1 or 2 years ago, and at most 10 years, but what layer of the flower blossom tier could they have reached in 10 years? The fight against the golden blood demonic ape back then, there were also over 20 flower blossom tier warriors, even ones at the 9th layer, but weren't they still knocked about in all directions? Chapter 503. If you admit defeat, then pay up. Chapter 503. If you admit defeat, then pay up. Reverie _ By Ling Han's side was Wen Yijian and the rock spirit. Wen Yijian was very strong, and when he was still at the spiritual pedestal tier, he easily defeated Yang Jun Han. Now that he crossed into the flower blossom tier, he also displayed an invincible bearing. He could at least fight 10 by himself. The rock spirit was even scarier, more kick-ass than king tier beasts in the same tier, because it was a spirit of the 5 elements, a higher level life form. The 3 people joining hands actually suppressed over 20 flower blossom tier opponents. Great. Once the fight started, Wen Yijian forgot about everything and swung his sword as if he was crazy, the sword's momentum terrifying. He opened up his left hand and formed a strange seal. Since you guys want the mystic arts of the 12 palaces so desperately, then I'll let you guys experience it firsthand. He fired out his left hand. Instantly, a massive dark scorpion appeared, snipping at people with its large pincers. At the same time, it raised its stinger, firing continuously. This scorpion emitted a terrifying presence. Even Ling Han somewhat palpitated with fear. Scorpio Palace's mystical power. The 3 originally had the advantage, and in addition to Wen Yijian's sudden demonstration of power, they instantly suppressed everyone, making them scurry away while covering their heads. Yang Jun Hao and the others stared agape. They were also this generation's prodigies? Look at Wen Yijian, who was only 18, but his battle prowess crushed a whole bunch of old prodigies. With this comparison, did they still have the face to call themselves prodigies? Ling Han probably forcibly increased his power with a medicinal pill. He definitely isn't at the flower blossom tier. Yes, just like that flower blossom tier guy said earlier, Ling Han's actual power is only at the 2nd or the 3rd layer of the flower blossom tier. But it's truly freakish. It seems his current battle prowess is at least 10 stars, right? Not only him, one Yijian is no less frightening than Ling Han. The onlookers discussed animatedly, thinking that if spiritual infant tier warriors didn't come, there truly weren't many flower blossom tier ones that could suppress Ling Han and Wen Yijian. These were exceptional geniuses, strong to the point that surpassed the extent of understanding of normal people. Ao Feng and the other flower blossom tier warriors began to collapse. They actually all carried the treasures granted by spiritual infant tier seniors. Some were spirit talismans and some were law decrees, but they used up most of them venturing inside the mystery realm earlier, and only a few people had any remaining. Compelled by circumstances, they unleashed these treasures one after another. They didn't want to carry the charge of murdering a heaven-grade alchemist, but also didn't want to be crowned with the foul reputation of being defeated by two juniors. They had to take the two down. Hong, a law decree rose up, immediately burning into ash in the sky, and then a lofty squared mountain appeared out of the blaze. It was all black and emitted a ceaseless power of the earth. When Yi Jin's body instantly stopped, almost falling down to the ground. The power of the spiritual infant tier was too strong. Even if it was only an attack sealed inside a law decree, it was still extremely terrifying. A mere spiritual infant tier law decree. When Yi Jin searched with his hand and took out a conch. Since you guys want to play, I'll play with you guys. He blew the conch. Woo! The ancient sounds of bugle call echoed, calling upon heaven and earth. Blue characters flew out of the horn, forming an unusual spirit. Its upper body was man, and its lower body was a fish tail. It held a trident in hand and leashed out fiercely at the black mountain in the sky. Pung! The black mountain instantly exploded. Rubble shot out, frightening people out of their senses. Those were spiritual infant tier attacks. Even a fragment could instantly kill spiritual pedestal tier cultivators. Fortunately, under the merman's thrust, the black mountain lost its might, and the shards that flew out actually had no destructive power, making everyone alarmed in vain. That thing's so awesome. Ling Han's gaze shone with curiosity as he said, Junior Brother One, lend me it for a few days to play with? When Yi Jin rolled his eyes and hurriedly put away the conch. In your dreams. Ling Han laughed and said, Junior Brother One, keep it up, kill them all. When Yi Jin didn't utter a word. Only he knew that this conch was something he'd acquired by chance. It could only be used once a month, and if it was used again within 30 days, his life force would be the price for its activation. Activating it once was 10 years, twice was 100 years. Although he advanced into the flower blossom tier, he couldn't blow it that many times. However, the other people didn't know it, and seeing their law decrees easily neutralized, what other ways were there to suppress these two youngsters? We're not fighting anymore, they said one after another. If they kept fighting, they would only embarrass themselves. They had to leave quickly and request spiritual infant tier elites to suppress these two juniors. You could fend off law decrees, but you'd have no way against the real deal, right? Not fighting. Ling Han glanced at everyone. You guys are the ones who picked the fight, and now you guys say to stop the fight. Are you guys trying to make fun of me and Junior Brother One? SHT. Why did he include me again? Wen Yijian scorned inwardly, but he was also an extremely proud person. Being attacked from all sides by these people, he was obviously annoyed as well, so he let Ling Han mess around. What does Master Ling want? Ao Feng opened up. Ling Han smiled coldly and said, You guys attacked me, a heaven-grade alchemist, for no reason, frightening me. This needs compensation, and my friends inside the mystery realm, you guys intimidated them and want to slip away just like that? Lu Yutong and the others were touched, so Ling Han knew. Ao Feng and the other flower blossom tier elites were extremely gloomy. They'd certainly wanted to take down Lu Yutong and the others to threaten Ling Han, but they were stopped by the formation spirit before doing so. Now they had to pay compensation? Don't compensate, then we'll keep fighting. Ling Han said, quickly adapting. Sure, I can't keep you all here, but 1 or 2 is doable. I'll see who's an eyesore and says no to me first, and when the time comes, I'll make him stay, cutting off his head to use as a bowl for wine. This threat was very uncivilized yet also extremely real, making Ao Feng and the others speechless. How do we compensate? Ao Feng said, clenching his teeth. Wanting you cocky people to offer an apology is probably impossible and also has no meaning. Who doesn't know that one might say sorry from one's mouth, but inwardly says, Ling Han thought momentarily and said, pay origin crystals, 1,000 per person. 1,000? Everyone sighed in relief. 1,000 origin crystals was truly a mere trifle for Flower Blossom tier warriors. 1,000 3-star origin crystals per person, Ling Han added. Pooh. Ao Feng and the others spurted out. Why didn't you go rob that? 3-star origin crystals needed at least Flower Blossom tier warriors to refine. Normally speaking, 1 month was necessary to refine a single piece, and you actually demanded 1,000 right away. Think real carefully. Whoever rejects first, I'll make him stay. Ling Han laughed mischievously. These Flower Blossom tier cultivators instantly lost their temper and felt even more in a rush to return to request help from spiritual infant tier seniors, not wanting to tangle with Ling Han. So, they threw out their spatial rings one by one. Some people didn't have 1,000 3-star origin crystals, so they used rare materials and spirit grass instead. Chapter 504, Love Tender Like Water. Chapter 504, Love Tender Like Water. Reverie _ Seeing Ling Han rake in wealth crazily, when Yi Jian couldn't help but utter, I don't get a share? Junior brother one, you come from a large sect in the East region. How could you possibly want such small things? Ling Han's hands moved non-stop, and soon over 20 spatial rings were shoved into his pocket. Damn, 3-star origin crystals, who said he wasn't interested. However, being branded by Ling Han as such, he couldn't grab a hold of this matter anymore, and said seriously, since you also received those coordinates, we're destined to be rivals in the future. Maybe not. Maybe we can take the treasure together. Ling Han said smilingly. You think that's possible? One Yi Jian sneered. A god's treasure trove, who didn't want it all for themselves. Why not? Seeing Ling Han full of smiles, One Yi Jian instantly felt puzzled, shaking his head as he said, You're truly a strange person. You're also very strong. Hope that you'll qualify to challenge me in the future, Ling Han said. When Yi Jian rolled his eyes again and said, I'm genuinely in the Flower Blossom tier, and you advanced relying on medical pills. If anyone is to propose a challenge, you're the one to challenge me. Whatever, I won't talk nonsense with you, or else it's very likely I'll die from being angered by you. He turned to leave, waving his hand as he said, Next time we meet, I'll definitely kill you with all I've got. How come he reacted the same as Yao Huiyu? Junior brother one, wait. Ling Han suddenly shouted. When Yi Jian halted, then turned around with a doubtful expression. You really can't lend that conch to play with for a few days? Ling Han said smilingly. When Yi Jian almost spurted out blood, clenching his teeth as a get lost leapt out from his mouth, he immediately flew up and left in a hurry. It was unknown whether he'd return to the East region or find an uninhabited place to hide. After all, the news that he acquired Scorpio Palace's legacy would soon spread throughout the East region, and maybe his master would also be very interested in this legacy. Ling Han laughed, snapped his fingers at Lu Yutong and the others, and said, Let's go too. Master Han, where to? Lu Yutong couldn't help but ask. Of course, back to Extreme Yang City. However, your acquirement of the 12 Palaces legacy will soon spread throughout the world, and by then, everyone will come find you, everyone said at once. According to the legend, after acquiring the 12 Palaces legacy, one would have the chance to cross into Shattering Void tier. This temptation alone was irresistible. Moreover, Ling Han and Wen Yi Jian also knew the whereabouts of the god's treasure trove, which was even more unbelievable. Even the mighty Shattering Void tier elites in the middle state would be moved. Ling Han nodded and said, It certainly is somewhat troublesome. I'm afraid that even my title of Heaven Great Alchemist won't help. However, I'll still make a trip to Extreme Yang City. His mother was received there, so could he just make himself scarce like that? Lu Yutong and the others were worried, but thinking about how Ling Han had the Black Tower, self-preservation shouldn't be a problem. Only Yu Kaiyu, who was kept in the dark, became rather anxious for Ling Han. However, the mystery realm closed, and Yu had to return to the Winter Moon Sect. He bid farewell with Ling Han, saying that he would do his best to persuade the elders within the sect to provide protection for Ling Han. Qi Hualan, Lin Xiangqin, Sheng Zhongchun, and the others walked over one after another to say a few words with Ling Han as goodbye. The prodigy battle was already over, and the mystery realm contention come to an end. It was unknown how many years later the next time these youngsters would meet. Ling Han hastened his pace and led people out of the mountain valley as Black Tower's power boost would soon end. Coming out of the mountain valley, he stored everyone inside the Black Tower and went inside as well. Only after applying a disguise did he come out and went to a small town, hired a carriage, and returned leisurely to Extreme Yang City. After settling in the carriage, Ling Han had the coachman not bother him and also not call him for the 3 meals of a day, and then went into the Black Tower. During this trip, everyone profited quite a bit. Zhu Wujiao and Guang Yuan kept tempering themselves at the city gate of the first stage, pushing themselves to the limits and then taking in worldly treasures to cultivate. With the spiritual Chirich environment within the mystery realm, their improvements were like a shot. Zhu Wujiao was already at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and could charge at the spiritual pedestal tier anytime, whereas Guang Yuan was at the 6th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Such progression speed was something they would have never imagined back in Rain Country. Qin Yi and Lu Yutong sharpened their willpower on the floating stone stage. Although their cultivation improvement wasn't as evident as Zhu Wujiao's and Guang Yuan's, the benefits of tenacious willpower would be reflected slowly in the future, especially when charging at the threshold of the Flower Blossom tier. After the carriage traveled for 2 days, Lu Yutong, Zhu Wujiao, and Qin Yi announced their breakthroughs simultaneously. They crossed into the spiritual pedestal tier, and this was only 2 to 3 months after they'd broken through to the spiritual ocean tier. Reflecting back on it, even they themselves couldn't believe it. Zhu Xian'er's divine senses injury was much better. This was mainly because she personally had great martial arts talent, and in resisting the martial intent of a Flower Blossom tier elite, her divine sense received great tempering. After her injury healed, she would definitely welcome a stage of explosive growth, and her cultivation would skyrocket rapidly. Ling Han called her to the side and threw her a pill bottle. Master Han, Xian'er's injuries are almost all healed. I don't need to take any more medicine, this exceptional beauty said, exuding tenderness and love. Since Ling Han uncovered her veil, she no longer wore it, and her stunning appearance even entranced Lu Yutong and Li Xichan. Ling Han laughed and said, "This isn't for you to eat, but for your master." Zhu Xian'er was first startled, followed by her showing an excited expression as she said quaveringly, Could this? Hidden Tiger Heavenly Luck Pill. Ling Han nodded. I received it passing through the 2nd stage, and thankfully, you blocked a sword attack. Otherwise, if I died, I wouldn't have received this reward, so it's a gift. He hadn't finished his words, and Zhu Xian'er already leaped over, hugging him tightly. Great. Was this foolish girl addicted to hugging him? However, not to mention her exceptional beauty and perfect physique, being hugged by her, their bodies stuck to each other without reservation. A faint body fragrance spread, which made Ling Han's heart involuntarily flutter somewhat as he was lost in fanciful thoughts. Thank you. Zhu Xian'er said emotionally. Finding a spiritual medicine for her respected teacher was her greatest wish. Ling Han was awkward for a short while before patting her on the shoulder and saying, A piece of cake. When your injuries are healed, hurry back to the Half Moon Sect.
Yes.
Zhu Xian'er said softly and nodded, extremely gentle. All right, you can let go of me now, or I can't promise what might happen next, Ling Han joked. Whatever Master Han wants to do to Xian'er would be willing. Who knew such a reply, soft like a mosquito's buzz, would sneak out from his embrace, but with Ling Han's hearing ability, how was it possible for him not to have heard clearly? Were there words more seductive than those in this world? Ling Han's blood all over his body boiled, having the urge to press down the exceptional beauty within his embrace. Who didn't like beauties, especially such a remarkable beauty? He didn't force her and didn't lure her with promises, So he didn't need to hold back and pretend to be a gentleman since she was willing, right? However, without any reason, a silhouette suddenly flashed by Ling Han's mind, making his wonderful thoughts instantly vanish completely. It was actually Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Chapter 505. The matter wasn't settled. Chapter 505. The matter wasn't settled. Reverie _ Ling Han rejected Zhu Xian air and said, "Your injury hasn't healed. Go back to rest first." Zhu Xian air had just said something that made her embarrassed to the point that her entire body was burning hot and was now stupefied. If Ling Han took advantage and pushed her down, then they would experience the most intimate contact. She would then not have to be reserved in front of Ling Han, but now she couldn't even open her eyes, scramming hurriedly. Sigh. Such an exceptional beauty threw herself into my arms. I actually didn't take it. Ling Han lay on the grass, looking at the sky without stars and moon. Does my brain have a problem to think of that savage woman at such a time? Then, Ling Han sat up abruptly, face twitching. Hiss, could I have actually fallen for that meddling woman? Otherwise, under those circumstances, which man would reject it? I don't have a freaking wife, so it doesn't matter which woman I'm with, right? No matter whether it was Lu Yutong or Li Xichan, why was it that I've never thought of touching them? It's over, it's over. It's already been a millennium, and I suddenly realized that I fell for that savage lady. How come? Other than looking prettier than most, being stronger than most, having martial talent greater than most, and having a physique better than most, she didn't seem to have any more merits. The key is savage, subduing my 4 disciples, and coming to my place to sweep out the medicinal pills from time to time. She never treated herself as an outsider. I've truly never seen such a rogue woman. What? Ling Han's expression was strange. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden behaved like she was the mistress. Could it be? Could it be? I'm such an idiot, he yelled out towards the sky. Small Tower appeared and said to him indifferently, "You certainly are an idiot. I only spoke thoughtlessly. Someone incomparably smart like me is million miles away from stupid." Ling Han immediately returned to his carefree attitude, as he didn't want others to know what weighed on his mind. "You can't hide from me. In the past millennium, I preserved your soul, and your memories in those years were all clearly seen by me." Small Tower still insipid. Hey, is it really good for you to spy on people's privacy? Ling Han wanted to punch someone. You think I wanted to look? Small Tower said coldly, paused, then went on. It's clear. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was interested in you, but you bonehead didn't realize at all. Since Small Tower knew, Ling Han pretended no longer, sighing and said, "That savage woman was so domineering. If she liked me, just say so." Not gentle at all. However, he immediately shook his head. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, one of the 7 heaven-tier elites in his previous life, the beautiful battle goddess who was second to Sword Emperor, the super genius. How could she possibly affectedly ingratiate herself with a man like a normal woman would? If it truly were like that, then would that still be Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden? Your gentleness, I really don't understand. Ling Han muttered. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden ran over to his place from time to time and grabbed things left and right, not acting like an outsider at all. This was actually an obvious hint. Unfortunately, he was too proud back then, and all he wanted to do was cross into the shattering void tier to suppress that savage woman. If he took a step back, maybe Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden would also relinquish her haughty airs, and the two would already have been together. Now, they were separated by a millennium. Even Jiang Yufeng, that attention-seeker, became a god. With Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's talents, she definitely also broke the void and became a god. And once one's a god, while perhaps one's lifespan wouldn't be infinite, living for several tens of thousands of years shouldn't be a problem. Ling Han immediately clenched his fist. Wait till I break the void and become a god. I'll definitely come find you. You savage woman, if you dare marry another man, then I'll really be done with you. The carriage rocked, and spent 7 days to return to Extreme Yang City. Ling Han immediately had Li Xichan, Lu Yutong, and the others leave for Not Forget and Alchemist King Pavilion to take back the origin crystals earned in these few days. This was the truly useful thing. Silver didn't matter. He personally went to the North Pill Pavilion to find Gongyang Tai Sunday. He had to pick up his mother and return to Rain Country to reunite with his father. Alchemists devoted heart and soul to refining pills, even giving up the quotas for 12 Heaven Mystery Realm. Although part of the reason was because they were no match for martial artists, this group was certainly indifferent to martial arts, so there were also few elites among them. For example, amongst the alchemists of North Pill Pavilion, only one reached the spiritual infant tier, and it was precisely Gongyang Tai Sunday. Ling Han believed that Gongyang Tai Sun would definitely revere his title of Heaven Great Alchemist and not want to obtain the 12 Palaces legacy from him. Of course, he didn't completely trust someone he didn't know quite well. Anyway, with the Black Tower, he could escape safely under the worst circumstances. After arriving at the North Pill Pavilion, he showed everyone his original looks. Respects for Master Ling. On his path, all alchemists paid their respects. Ling Han slightly nodded in response, and soon came to Gongyang Tai Sun's private house. And when the Gongyang Tai Sun received news, he also came greeting immediately. Master Han, this old one is useless and couldn't settle the matter. Gongyang Tai Sun told Ling Han who was to blame. An ominous feeling surged within Ling Han as he said with a frown, "What happened?" "The Winter Moon Sect won't let her go," Gongyang Tai Sun said furiously. With a heaven-grade alchemist's order on paper and in addition to him, a medium-level earth-grade alchemist, making a trip, he actually couldn't get anyone even. He was extremely annoyed. Ling Han stroked his chinked Winter Moon Sect. Think of threatening him with his mother? It was impossible for the Winter Moon Sect to know Ling Han's relationship with Yu Hongchong, but anyone would find it strange a heaven-grade alchemist demanded a sinner of Winter Moon Sect. More importantly, North Region wasn't the middle state. Here, a heaven-grade alchemist was actually no different from a medium-level earth-grade alchemist. If spiritual infant-tier warriors truly didn't give face, what could you do? Summon a deity transformation tier to suppress them? Just like in the middle state, Yao Huiyu and the disciples of such super sects actually didn't respect alchemists a single bit. I know. Ling Han nodded. Apparently, he'd have to personally go over to the Winter Moon Sect. Master Han, this old one will accompany on your trip, Gongyang Tai Sun said worriedly. Obviously, he'd already heard that Ling Han acquired the 12 Palaces legacy and feared that the Winter Moon Sect might resort to violence. No need, I have my own strategy, Ling Han said smilingly. He left the North Pill Pavilion and returned to his dwellings. Lu Yutong and the others returned one after another, bringing bad news. Both places had been destroyed. No one knew who'd done it, but after the shop closed at night, once the door opened the second day, there would be corpses inside. With the stench of corpses filling the air, who would still want to eat or buy medicine? The Thousand Corpse Sect. A dignified large sect actually used such lowly tactics, truly lacking in class. Is this trying to make me uncomfortable? Ling Han muttered. Fortunately, these two properties only brought in a stable income for Ling Han. What truly allowed him to get rich quick was auctioning medicinal pills, so this couldn't harm him seriously. Forget about this. I've now acquired the 12 Palaces legacy, and my background will soon be dug out bit by bit, so I must save Mother as soon as possible and then bring Father out of Rain Country. Can't let others have a hold on me. To the Winter Moon Sect. Chapter 506, Eat the Main Gate. Chapter 506, Eat the Main Gate. Reverie _ Ling Han simply closed Forget Not and Alchemist King Pavilion. During this time, In Hong came over once, and Ling Han promised to come over at the year's end to fulfill his previous promise, representing North Region's Spirit Treasure Pavilion to attend that contest. Afterwards, he departed and headed for the Winter Moon Sect. Zhu Xian didn't return to the Half Moon Sect. Her injuries weren't healed, and with her fame of an exceptional beauty, if someone knew she was still injured, it was hard to guarantee that someone wouldn't take advantage of it and snatch her to keep her locked as a mistress. Consequently, she recuperated inside the Black Tower and followed Ling Han to the Winter Moon Sect. Ling Han still hired a carriage while he cultivated diligently every day. This trip to the Winter Moon Sect took a month. When he arrived, he also reached the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Inside the Black Tower, everyone cultivated diligently, especially who began cultivating for the first time, making Ling Han cry out like he'd seen a ghost. After 1 month, the carriage finally rocked its way to the Winter Moon Sect. Ling Han advanced to the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier as a matter of course, and he also advanced into the level of the spiritual ocean tier in cultivating the 9 dragons tyrant body art. However, the increase of brute force was consistent and unlike origin power, whose power would increase explosively upon a breakthrough to the next layer. Brute force had no hurdles. It was simply the accumulation of diligent cultivation, and most importantly, one's nutrition had to keep up. Only when becoming God in flesh would barriers emerge. Ling Han examined it shortly. The 9 dragons tyrant body art was to open the 9 godly barriers inside the body, and with each barrier unlocked, one would possess the power of a true dragon. When all 9 barriers opened, one could become a god in flesh. Otherwise, even if one had the power of several true dragons, one would still be confined to the realm of mortals. At best, one would just be an extremely strong mortal. Like spiritual pedestal tier warriors, no matter how powerful you were, that wasn't the flower blossom tier. Unfortunately, Ling Han reached a bottleneck in studying the 2 bone patterns, unable to comprehend it all along. Probably, his tier wasn't enough, and he had to cross into the flower blossom tier to comprehend it. Instead, he made remarkable progress in the way of the sword because the bottleneck of the 10th flash of sword chi opened. It was as if he returned to when he only had 1 flash of sword chi. In the short time of a month, he cultivated another 3 flashes of sword chi. 13 flashes of sword chi. This already surpassed Yao Huiyu. However, Yao Huiyu had probably just broken through to the 10th flash of sword chi at the time, and very soon grasped the 11th flash of sword chi. He now was probably no lower than 13 flashes of sword chi. Ling Han believed in the Yao Huiyu's strength. Besides, Wenjian never attacked with full strength all along, and that guy's limit probably also surpassed the limit of 10 flashes. He waved his hand, signaling the carriage to retreat as he walked alone towards Winter Moon Sect's main gate. This familiar gate and path, he just arrived at the place, but was already obstructed. A large sect naturally wouldn't let people go in as they pleased. Ling Han actually had Han Lin's identity token, but he didn't take it out. He originally thought to use this identity to secretly investigate the whereabouts of his mother, but since he already returned to the identity of a heaven-grade alchemist, he didn't have go through such trouble, directly demanding for his mother. "I am Ling Han. Let your sect master get the hell out to see me," Ling Han said indifferently. "Sect master, get the hell out to see me?" This put together instantly stupefied the few disciples near the main gate. Was this youngster an idiot to run to the Winter Moon Sect to say such a thing? Was he tired of living? Ling Han had no intention of tangling here and directly unleashed the presence of the spiritual pedestal tier, instantly suppressing these few people, making them dreadfully pale. They hurriedly ran staggeringly, hurriedly requesting experts to come out. Someone was here to break through the main gate. Soon, some experts appeared. There were spiritual ocean tier warriors, spiritual pedestal tier ones, and of course more were normal disciples at the gushing spring tier. Everyone was very curious because the Winter Moon Sect was one of 4 strongest forces in the North region. Someone actually dared to come look for trouble? What Ling Han? Someone recognized him, a friend from the 9 nations of the desolate North. Bai Yuquan, Zhong Higuang, Chu Shui Yun, and the others were all geniuses of the 9 nations of the desolate North. Their improvements were evident, all crossing into the spiritual ocean tier. Back at the desolate North, they would be the mainstays of large families. They were even more surprised as they heard Ling Han had become a heaven-grade alchemist. This was like dream to them, unimaginable. It was definitely just 2 people with the same first and last name. Now, this legendary figure of the desolate North appeared before them, an 18-year-old youngster who was still somewhat immature. "So it's Master Ling." A spiritual pedestal tier officer walked out, cupped his hand in obeisance towards Ling Han, and said, "We're honored to have you here. Might I ask what business you have?" Ling Han glanced at him and said coldly, "Who the hell are you to have the right to speak to me? A small figure should stand by the side and let the grown-ups come." That spiritual pedestal tier warrior couldn't help but choke, revealing an annoyed look. A mere 18-year-old youngster. He only said those courteous words out of respect for him being a heaven-grade alchemist, but he never would have thought he'd be answered with such cold words. As he saw it, the Winter Moon Sect was one of North Region's strongest sects, and though alchemists were beyond the public, now that he ran roughshod over the sect before its gate, who needed to be courteous with him? Status beyond the public's was because the position he took was also beyond the public, but if he participated in the disputes of ordinary affairs, then how would he be beyond the public? "The Winter Moon Sect doesn't welcome you. Please leave," that spiritual pedestal tier guy said, displeased. "Already said that you have no right, so why do you like to babble?" Ling Han said with displeasure as well. Outrageous. That spiritual pedestal tier cultivator was furious, launching an attack towards Ling Han. He planned to teach this youngster a lesson and let him know that this was Winter Moon Sect and not the Alchemist Society. A mere spiritual pedestal tier warrior dares to attack a heaven-grade alchemist? Ling Han said coldly as his figure already flashed before that spiritual pedestal tier elite. How could he be so quick? The other party was stunned, but before being able to react in time, Ling Han's hand already waved past his face, and then he knew nothing. Death? Hiss, gasps of astonishment sounded in the surrounding. That was a spiritual pedestal tier officer, but he was killed with a single strike. Too inconceivable. Could it be that Ling Han was at the Flower Blossom tier? The people from the desolate north were even more surprised. How could Ling Han be so strong? Everyone walked out from the desolate north, but without seeing each other for a year. The gap between them was like heaven and earth. Pa, that spiritual pedestal tier's corpse fell to the ground and slightly kicked up the dust, appearing so inconspicuous. Ling Han retracted his fist and said indifferently, "Ones who can speak and decide still won't come out? Master Ling, coming to Winter Moon Sect to kill, that's not so wise, is it?" With a sneer, several people flew out from the mountains, standing loftily in the air. "I only have one thing to say. Hand over Yu Hongchong," Ling Han said balefully. "Ha, killing one of Winter Moon Sect's disciples and still wanting to see someone?" Ao Feng also showed up. "Hand over the 12 Palaces legacy as compensation. You truly know how to tell jokes." Ling Han waved his right hand and summoned the rock spirit. "Eat this entire mountain up." The rock spirit wiped off cold sweat. It liked to eat rocks, but those were unusual rocks that possessed super energy that could increase its strength. It couldn't swallow just any type of rock. But Master spoke up, so how could it not obey? The large fellow immediately dug in. The first to suffer was the main gate. It was mashed with a palm, and then the shattered pillars were picked up and gnawed on. Everyone was shocked and angered. The main gate represented a sect's face. Chapter 507, Dealing a Trump Card. Chapter 507, Dealing a Trump Card. Reverie _ Ling Han. Many Flower Blossom tier warriors roared angrily. This youngster was too young, making it hard for them to have the respect for him as a heaven-grade alchemist. Ling Han cracked a smile and simply pretended not to have heard them. The golem was extremely gloomy. The rock pillars were truly unpalatable. It turned its head frequently towards Ling Han, hoping to receive Master's kind permission to no longer munch on these rocks. "All right, you want to see Yu Hongchong, then I'll let you see her." Ao Feng spoke up. He was a spiritual infant tier warrior's descendant, so his words were naturally more effective than normal Flower Blossom tier cultivators. Waving his hand, someone immediately left. Ling Han frowned. Ao Feng's anger wasn't that intense, and even had the trace of a lofty smirk deep within his eyes. Could it be that he'd already guessed his relationship with Yu Hongchong? This wasn't impossible. After all, a heaven-grade alchemist demanded a person that they'd never seen without any reason. Was this not worthy to think about deeply? Thinking about the two people's ages and how Winter Moon Sect just recruited a new bunch of disciples from Rain Country, could he not have scouted out some information on Ling Han? Now he pretended to be affected just to probe him. Ling Han sneered. He ran over naturally, not due to a temporary impulse. He also had a trump card. Shortly, two spiritual pedestal tier cultivators walked over with a woman in detention. That woman was only 40 years old, with a dejected look on her face, yet it didn't hide her beauty. Examining closely, she looked somewhat similar to Ling Han. This was definitely Yu Hongchang. Ling Han didn't even need to ask, feeling a connection in bloodline, which made him certain that this was his birth mother. Master Ling, now that the person's been brought here, what do you have to say? Ao Feng said indifferently, seeming to have everything in his grasp. Ling Han stood with his hands behind his back and said, "Let her go." Junior sister Hong Yu Chong, doesn't this youngster look familiar? Ao Feng spoke instead to Yu Hongchang. Ever since Yu Hongchang saw Ling Han, her gaze was fixed on him, with disbelief and agitation between her expressions. Her body even began to tremble. She didn't pay attention to Ao Feng, simply looking at Ling Han absorbedly, as if she'd never see enough. Master Ling, it's said that you come from Rain Country in the 9 nations of the desolate north, in a small town ruled by large origin city. Your father's name is Ling what again? Ao Feng got the cold shoulder, but didn't seem to mind, asking Ling Han again. Hearing this, Yu Hongchang's expression was even more emotional, but she immediately returned to being indifferent and said, "I don't recognize this youngster. Bring me back." Junior sister Hongchang, so cold after seeing your son separated for 18 years? Ao Feng smiled grimly as he finally threw out the heavy bomb. Hong. Hearing those words, the people of the Winter Moon Sect were stirred up. So it turned out that Ling Han's mother was actually a disciple of the Winter Moon Sect. Moreover, her identity was not simple. No wonder Ling Han would demand someone for no reason. There was a reason to after all. I don't know what nonsense you're talking about. Yu Hongchang looked calm and collected. Ling Han, however, revealed a smile and said, "Mother, no need to hide. Today, I'm here to bring you back to reunite with father." Instantly, the entire mountain was in an uproar. Guessing was one thing, but confirming was another. A dignified heaven-grade alchemist actually had such a deep relationship with the Winter Moon Sect. However, the relationship between the two parties didn't look peaceful in any way. As Ling Han called his mother, Yu Hongchang instantly burst into tears. She resisted acknowledging her son wasn't it, because she didn't want to let the Winter Moon Sect use her to coerce her son by holding her hostage. However, she never would have thought that her son would acknowledge her in public. Without seeing her son for 18 years, her emotions completely lost control once she heard Ling Han call her mother. She cried bitterly, and if she weren't restrained, she truly wanted to take Ling Han into her embrace and look at him as much as she wanted. 18 years, an entire 18 years. Ha 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 ha. Ao Feng laughed loudly yet extremely balefully. He never would have thought that the little pest he'd spared out of sudden soft-heartedness back then actually became a heaven-grade alchemist, a figure that was on par with sect masters. Now, it was very difficult to kill Ling Han, especially with Ling Han having the 12 Palaces legacy, which was even related to a god's treasure trove. If the Winter Moon Sect directly killed him and snatched the treasure, the entire North region's forces would attack the Winter Moon Sect together in the name of taking revenge for a heaven-grade alchemist. However, there wouldn't be a problem if Ling Han stayed at the Winter Moon Sect. As long as Ling Han admitted that he was willing to stay here, who could meddle in their business? To make Ling Han stay willingly was easy as long as there was Yu Hongchang. Coerce him with Yu Hongchang's life, and he wouldn't be afraid that Ling Han would be disobedient. However, no matter what, Ao Feng couldn't seem to be happy. This little pest was a stain in his life. The woman who was supposed to be his wife gave birth to another man's son, and seeing Ling Han made him feel like he'd been cheated on. Unfortunately, killing Ling Han or not wasn't something he could decide. This was a decision of Winter Moon Sect's higher-ups, reflecting the will of the 9 old monsters at the spiritual infant tier. Master Ling, since you've acknowledged your blood, stay in the sect in the future. Moreover, I'll invite your father over and let your family reunite, Ao Feng said balefully. Would he really be so kind to let the son of a personal enemy stand there and bring over the man who made him a cuckold to wander before his eyes all day? One was enough as a hostage, and the other would be killed poor encourager less Otra's one. Master Ling, since we're so sincere, shouldn't you also show sincerity to some extent? Ao Feng said smilingly. It's said that you obtained many treasures inside the 12-heaven mystery realm. Take it all out and let us see. Ling Han also smiled, but was also very cold. Do your ears have problems? I said. Today I'm here to take someone away. If Master Ling wants to leave, then please. Another flower blossom tier elite Sade was coldly Pei Yuan, and the Li family also had a mighty spiritual infant tier. However, junior sister Hong Chong is a person of the Winter Moon Sect, so she'll naturally stay in the sect. Ling Han looked at the dozen flower blossom tier elites before him and said, "What if I forcibly take someone away?" Ha 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 ha. Everyone laughed loudly. Ao Feng went on, Master Ling, your accomplishments in alchemy are certainly unmatched, but you're still just a spiritual pedestal tier warrior. Moreover, though you have medicinal pills to get stronger by one large tier, this sect has not just flower blossom tier elites. In reality, Ling Han had already used the Black Tower's power boost at the spiritual pedestal tier, and now couldn't possibly possess battle prowess of the flower blossom tier. But of course, he wouldn't say so. Killing's what uncivilized men do, Ling Han said disdainfully, and then waved his right hand as a corpse instantly appeared at the main gate. Hong. A terrifying presence swept. Chapter 508. One Man Against One Sect. Chapter 508. One Man Against One Sect. Reverie _ Everyone dropped weakly onto the ground. The coercive power of the gods' remains was too strong, and furthermore, this wasn't the divine temple which could suppress godly presence. It instantly swept towards the mountaintop and frightened the spiritual infant tier elites as they shot up into the sky one after another, not daring to get close. Whoever went up would be out of luck? Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "See? Like I said, I don't like to kill. That's the most inferior way of doing things." If Liu Tong heard those words, she would definitely snicker because Ling Han very often liked to kill. Even though he could clearly use his title to resolve things, she had to use his fists. Now, no one could retort. Under the gods' coercive might, no one could open their mouths. Ling Han walked to Yu Hongcheng's side, helped her up, and said, "Mother, you've suffered a lot these years." Yu Hongcheng couldn't speak, simply blinking her eyes as tears fell down. Ling Han helped her mother to the side to sit down, and spoke of a few things about his father, looking like he was going to engage in small talk here. This made the people of the Winter Moon Sect speechless. They were still lying on all fours. However, other than sweating cold sweat, they couldn't do anything else. "Mother, I'll first send you away." Ling Han walked Yu Hongcheng to the back of a large rock and made Yu Hongcheng not resist his consciousness, storing her into the Black Tower. The Winter Moon Sect would definitely not let the matter drop like this. There were still 9 spiritual infant tier elites, and though they didn't dare to approach now, once Ling Han put away the god's remains, they would definitely attack immediately. Ling Han could hide into the Black Tower at any time, but with one more person, accidents would inevitably occur, and Yu Hongcheng definitely couldn't get into an accident. He walked back, arriving before Ao Feng. Ao Feng could only look up at the son of his enemy, and the psychological damage inside his heart was probably astonishingly large. There were definitely 10,000 grass mud horses galloping by. "Pa!" Ling Han stepped on his face and crushed it forcefully, making Ao Feng groan in pain. He had no rock cliff body, nor iron sheet body, and without an origin power barrier, his body's defense was only slightly stronger than a normal person's. "I should take your life, but as a son, I shouldn't deprive my father of his job. So, your life will be left for my father to personally take." Ling Han kicked Ao Feng ferociously, crippling Ao Feng's spirit base. That was how Ao Feng treated his father back then, and now Ling Han paid it back in full. From now on, Ao Feng's cultivation would stagnate at the 3rd layer of the flower blossom tier, while Ling Dongxing's tier would soon catch up. To repair a spirit base? No way. What grade of spirit pill was required to restore a spirit base crippled by Ling Han? At least heaven grade. Where would Ao family find that? He should just quietly wait for death. Ao Feng couldn't even yell out, simply groaning in pain. He was the genius of the Winter Moon Sect, breaking through to the Flower Blossom tier before being 50 years in age, with a chance to cross into the spiritual infant tier in the future. But now, his spirit base was destroyed, breaking off his path of advancement. He was shocked, angered, and frightened, instantly fainting. Scaring a Flower Blossom tier warrior till they fainted, Ling Han probably created a first in history. Ling Han smiled slightly, swept his gaze past Feng Yin, and walked over in large strides. Although I've never cared about you, since I've come, I might as well take care of you. Seeing Feng Yan's lips tremble, trying hard to speak, Ling Han simply picked up Feng Yan and walked far from the god's skeletal remains. Ling Han, you bully others by taking advantage of your connections. What hero you are. Feng Yan scolded. Ling Han was astonished and said, Do my ears have a problem? You'd actually say something so substandard? When you were in Rain Country, didn't you take advantage of having a spiritual infant tier master to try to kill me in public? Taking a spiritual infant tier law decree to assume unwarranted authority and acting extremely unbridled? It's all based on my own strength anyhow. How is this taking advantage of connections? Feng Yan, you're truly fallen low. Those words made Feng Yan's face red all over. At that time, he certainly had been self-satisfied, not even caring about Rain Emperor. In the end, it was Rain Emperor, whom he ignored, that unleashed surprising strength that repelled the expert sent from the Winter Moon Sect. If he'd straightened his attitude at the time, perhaps Rain Emperor wouldn't have intervened. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in all things. Ling Han, you have the guts to give me 3 years' time? Wait till I advance into Flower Blossom tier to battle again. Feng Yin said so upright and unafraid. He possessed an ancient divine beast's bloodline, and his cultivation progression speed was shockingly fast. Retard. Ling Han shook his head. Won't be long before your brother goes to Middle State to play. Why wait 3 years for you? By that time, the grass on your burial mound would have grown tall. You actually want to kill me? This is the Winter Moon Sect. Feng Yin yelled furiously. You overestimate yourself. So what if I killed you? I promise nothing happens to me. Ling Han pat Ling Han's face and said, You have any last words? Seeing that we're both Rain Country's people, I'll do my best to complete it for you. You can't kill me. I'm the disciple of a spiritual infant tier elite. Feng Yin suddenly screamed at the top of his lungs. Master, save me. Save me. Scream, yell till your throat breaks. No one will come save you, Ling Han said smilingly. Master Ling, would you give me some face and let this small disciple go? At this time, a voice sounded from off an indistinct white-browed old man could be seen standing in the air. He had a large stature and wore a white cotton clothing, very much like a celestial. Winter Moon Sect's spiritual infant tier elite, Shi Shun, who was also Feng Yan's master. Ling Han said indifferently, Why should I give you face? Who the hell are you? Hiss, how could he dare to speak to a spiritual infant tier elite like that? Everyone was first startled, but thinking carefully, Ling Han truly had such right. If it weren't the North region with different martial arts levels in the Middle State, a spiritual infant tier could only be servile to heaven-grade alchemists, so how could a spiritual infant tier even have any face? However, this was North region after all, and spiritual infant tier elites were above all else invincible. Was it truly wise to rebut a mighty spiritual infant tier like that? Shi Shun's face immediately twitched, and his sage-like presence immediately dispersed. He pointed threateningly at Ling Han and said, Junior, you dare touch a single hair on this old man's disciple, and this old man will skin you alive. Should I pretend to be scared to cooperate with you? Ling Han sneered. Sadly, though you lived quite long, you're not deserving of my respect, so take a hike. If you want to save him, come, I'll kill you too, old dog. Sure, He Shun roared furiously at the sky, but with the god's skeletal remains suppression, he didn't dare to approach at all. Otherwise, he would definitely be like the other people, suppressed by that supreme presence and unable to move. Ling Han smiled at Feng Yin and said, "Look, even your master has no way. You'd better just accept your fate." Chapter 509. Get Away. Chapter 509. Get Away? Reverie _ No. No. Feng Yin yelled. He didn't want to die. He couldn't die now. He possessed a divine beast's bloodline and had a chance to become a shattering void-tier elite in the future. Moreover, he hadn't taken revenge for his brother's death and the hatred of losing his leg, yet he was actually going to die in the hands of his enemy? Not resigned. He was not resigned. That's right, just this resentfulness. Ling Han said, "When you killed and hurt people brazenly, did you ever think of how the people you bullied felt? So, do as you would be done by. There will always be someone who can punish you. And you're very unfortunate to have met me. Be a good man in the next life, whatever. Just by your actions in this life, you still want to be a man? Better off as a pig and eaten to pay for your sins." 1. Ling Han stomped hard and Feng Yan's entire head instantly sunk into the mud. His limbs twitched for a while and soon drooped down. He was obviously thoroughly dead. Ling Han, Ling Han, Ling Han. Sure, He Shun roared angrily at the sky, bristling with anger. He was truly furious to the extreme. "Bring it on if you have the guts. This lord will battle 300 rounds with you," Ling Han challenged. Sure, He Shun couldn't possibly dare to accept the challenge. Running over, he would only be suppressed by the god's skeletal remains. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "If you guys don't come here, this lord will leave. Besides, you guys better think it through. If you want to chase after this lord, maybe you'll give away your life." He walked over and waved his hand, storing the god's skeletal remains in the Black Tower, but a ruthless mental shock immediately charged right at his consciousness, almost making him hack out blood. He could move freely under the godly presence, but touching the god's skeletal remains was another matter. Ling Han resisted with great difficulty, not letting anyone see an inkling of it. "If you want to chase this lord, bring it on." He looked again at Ao Feng, who had woken up. "Don't you die. Your life will be left for my father to reap. Or else, my father will be left with regret." Ao Feng simply wanted to raise his middle finger at Ling Han, but cold sweat was all over his body. He was completely out of strength, so he couldn't possibly raise his hand. Ling Han descended the mountain in large strides. In the sky, 9 divine senses constantly locked onto him. 8 were filled with killing intent, while 1 had a hint of friendliness. That was definitely Yu family's elder. In fact, the more valiant he was, the happier Yu family's elder would be. He was the descendant of the family, although not surnamed Yu. However, the other 8 spiritual infant tiers never attacked, probably having qualms about the god's skeletal remains. Perhaps they were waiting for Ling Han to be inattentive and careless to launch a sudden surprise attack, killing him. Besides, it would be an extremely problematic matter if a heaven-grade alchemist died at the Winter Moon Sect, so they obviously wanted to wait for him to be slightly further to attack. Ling Han, Ling Han. Yu quickly rushed over. After leaving the Mystery Realm, he went straight back to the Winter Moon Sect, so he obviously arrived several days earlier than Ling Han. "Brother Yu," Ling Han laughed. "Master Han Pa." Yu rushed over and snatched Ling Han by the chest, picking him up. "You bastard, you obviously knew I'm your older cousin, yet you still made me call you Master Han, Master Han. Let my aunt out to judge what's right and wrong." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Say, cousin, do you still remember that we made a bet, and you still owe me something?" "When did we make such a bet?" Yu was at a loss. Ling Han casually tossed an identity token at Yu. Han Lin. Yu received the identity token and finally realized that Han Lin was precisely Ling Han. When they entered Duan Zhangji's old hideout, Ling Han once made a bet with him whether Ling Han could extinguish that many corpse soldiers in a limited time, and obviously he lost. So, This guy had already anticipated it. You're too crafty, Yu Kai criticized. He finally understood why Han Lin would gift him Restore Spirit pill so generously, almost like a dolt. After all the answers were revealed, he was too embarrassed to criticize Ling Han. It couldn't be helped that he'd accepted those gifts and was now partial, no? Ling Han laughed loudly and said, I'll come see you in the future. As for now, you head back first. I'm afraid the old bastards will suddenly attack and drag you in. Can you block it? Yu Kai said seriously. No problem, Ling Han said full of confidence. Yu Kai nodded. He fought alongside Ling Han in the 12-Heaven Mystery Realm and was very confident in Ling Han. Since Ling Han said it was no problem, then there definitely wouldn't be a problem. All right, remember to come visit me with my aunt and uncle, he reminded again. Got it, got it. Why are you so much like an old woman? Ling Han waved his hand to dismiss him. You're the old woman, Yu Kai retorted, turning to leave as he kept waving at Ling Han. Ling Han also waved his hand, and then turned to leave, advancing in large strides. His mental spirit was raised to the limit, and once he felt the slightest rustle of leaves, he would immediately enter the Black Tower. He wasn't afraid of what anyone thought now since the news of the god's treasure trove got out anyway. Even shattering Void Tier elites could possibly attack him. There truly wasn't anything to be afraid of. Considering, wasn't there someone who opened the Sagittarius Palace previously? Why did the key circulate into the Jiang family's hands? Obviously, that person was slaughtered. After half a day, he was far from the Winter Moon's Sect. Presumably the 8 people who followed behind should attack soon. Ling Han smiled and jumped up abruptly into a large, surging river. Putong, water splashed everywhere, but he didn't float up, entering directly into the Black Tower. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. 9 figures descended from the sky. Each person revealed an astounded look because they no longer felt Ling Han's presence. However, an old man revealed a hint of a joyful smile in his astonishment. That was obviously Yu family's elder. How could he possibly disappear? Sure, He Shun yelled furiously. This boy must have some special method that can shield his presence and tracks, Ao family's elder conjectured, his gaze extremely baleful. His descendant, Ao Feng, who was most likely to advance into spiritual infant tier, had his spirit base crippled. Chased separately. The 9 people immediately moved separately. Yu family's elder obviously had other plans. If he encountered Ling Han, not only would he not seize Ling Han, but also think of a way to bring him away. However, they didn't know that the Black Tower turned into a speck that flowed with the surging stream and was rapidly rushing into the distance. This river would finally return to the sea, the exit of the desolate north. Ling Han didn't care so much. He entered the Black Tower and reunited with his mother. Son. After seeing Ling Han, Yu Hongchang, who'd stopped her tears, instantly cried in streams again, hugging Ling Han, unwilling to let go. She'd already waited 18 years by now and had assumed there would be no chance in this life for a reunion, but heaven was not cold to her, and finally, she saw her son again. Ling Han was also stirred up with emotion. He finally had a father and mother in this life. Chapter 510, Going Solo. Chapter 510, Going Solo. Reverie _ The mother and son spoke for a long, long time. It was basically Yu Hongchang asking how he spent the many years. Ling Han naturally reported the good and not the bad, and when she found out that her son had become a heaven-grade alchemist, Yu Hongchang was shocked speechless. No wonder Ao Feng and the others called Ling Han Master Ling. Turns out her so was quite accomplished. After chatting for half a day, Ling Han said, Mother, let me introduce you to some people. He brought Yu Hongchang over to see Lu Yutong and the others. It's our honor to see Mistress. Kan Yi, Zhu Wujiao, and Guang Yuan paid respects, kneeling on one knee, while the 3 girls sweetly called her auntie. Hunyo was somewhat muddled, biting on a finger. Yu Hongchang was instantly unable to conceal her happiness. These 3 girls were also charming, especially Zhu Xian'er, who was so beautiful that even she would be touched. Her son was truly fortunate to find such beautiful wives. The three girls obviously ingratiated themselves intentionally. This was their future mother-in-law, even if Ling Han wasn't interested in them. As long as they captured the heart of the mother-in-law, would they still fear not being able to become Ling Han's wife? Son, is this your daughter? Seeing Hu Niu, Yu Hongchan was involuntarily somewhat dumbfounded. Her son was only so mature, and he already has such a large daughter? Hu Niu stuck her hands on her hips and said in all seriousness, definitely not. Niu is Ling Han's wife. Yu Hongchan was speechless. This girl was only so old, and she said she wanted to be her son's wife. How long would her son have to wait? How long would she also have to wait before holding a grandson in her arms? However, this little girl was also really charming, delicate, and beautiful, and after she grew up, her looks probably wouldn't be inferior to Zhu Xian heirs. Hee, take the adults and keep the small one. All would be Ling family's people in the future. If Ling Dongxing dared to be so fickle, Yu Hongchang would definitely turn into a lioness, but it would be different for her son. The more wives the better, and best that all of them had big butts and could give birth to more grandsons and granddaughters for her. At this time, Ling Han had no room to interrupt. Yu Hongchan took the absolute initiative as she pulled on the Lu Yutong and the other two girls, chattering away like they were already a family. Hu Niu was unadapted to such an atmosphere and began to eat again, not fearing that being able to eat so much would scare the future mother-in-law. Can Yi, your path of martial arts is not by my side. Ling Han called Can Yi over. Following me, you can only become an expert in the future, but not a master of a generation. He paused shortly, then went on, I hope you can become a great master in the way of the saber, the Emperor of Sabers. Can Ye's breathing instantly sped up. He'd never thought Ling Han had such high expectations for him. He put up no pretenses, half kneeling as he said, Master Han, I definitely won't disappoint your expectations. Ling Han nodded and said, I'll give you enough resources, but at most ascend you to the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. The following road you'll have to walk on your own. However, the path you take on your own is the true martial arts that belongs to you. I understand. Can Yi nodded. Ling Han pondered and said, you can first go to middle state. I'll be going there next, but not under the identity of Ling Han. Can Yi understood. Everyone knew that Ling Han acquired the 12 Palaces legacy and even knew the location of a god's treasure trove. If Ling Han still casually ran to the middle state, he'd be broken into pieces by shattering void tier elites immediately. I'll still be called Han Lin. You can take note, but don't inquire intentionally, Ling Han followed. Yes. Can Yi nodded repeatedly. Ling Han threw Can Yi several spatial rings filled with all sorts of medicinal ingredients and other ingredients from within the Black Tower. This needed several spatial rings to pack, so it could be imagined how many things were inside. Can Yi was not at all reserved. He kept his appreciation in his heart. If Ling Han needed anything in the future, he would be Ling Han's saber, slashing towards any enemy. Go! Ling Han let Can Yi out of the Black Tower. The surging river water naturally couldn't do anything to a spiritual pedestal tier warrior. The Black Tower drifted with the waves, and after 10 days, Ling Han finally came out of the Black Tower. At this moment, he was already far from the Winter Moon Sect's territory. Having not found Ling Han in those many days, those spiritual infant tier cultivators completely lost track of him. However, these people were very likely to ambush him at the Fallen Moon Gorge, the land that had to be passed to enter the desolate north. Spiritual infant tier experts ambushing a spiritual pedestal tier 1. Saying this was extremely laughable, but Ling Han had a god's skeletal remains that even spiritual infant tiers dared not approach. So, obviously, they could only ambush him, not daring to let Ling Han summon the god's corpse. Ling Han shook his head inwardly. The two god corpses weren't preserved properly and were sucked of their godly essence, so the god tier's oppressive might was actually continuously fading. It was probably not long before they completely turned to normal bones. However, he didn't care. Suppressing others with God's bones was no help at all to his path of martial arts, and if it hadn't been for saving his mother this time, he actually wouldn't have wanted to use it. There were too many resources in the Black Tower, such as King Tier Beast Meat, high-tier origin crystals, various medicinal ingredients, and spiritual liquid. With these things added together, Ling Han's cultivation advanced to late stage of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier in a dozen days, arriving not far from the flower blossom tier. His brute force finally advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier as well, but the improvement rate began to slow down. After all, it caught up to Ling Han's tier, unlike before where it improved at an explosive speed. Everyone's improvements were evident. Yu Hongchang, who was originally at the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier, improved to the 4th layer in roughly half a month's time. It was clear how much benefit she received from the Black Tower. In half a month, I can charge at the flower blossom tier, Ling Han muttered. If those old bastards still dare to bully me, I'll use Black Tower's power boost again to crush and kill each and every one of them, making them drop the idea forever. Advancing into the flower blossom tier meant that he would finally take a true step in martial arts and break away from the identity of a mortal, possessing 200 years more lifespan and being able to fly in flesh. After another day, the majestic fallen moon gorge appeared before him. It was as if a mark cut by a divine saber and could almost be claimed a wonder. He walked over in large strides. He had to go to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall because he'd once promised to let Long Yongchang and the others observe him refining Restore Spirit Pill. In the end, he had Lu Jitong directly send the medicinal pill to Rain Country. However, there were many medium-level Earth-grade medicinal pills he could refine, so he'd just change one to refine. Xiao. An attack stormed over, as fast as lightning. Ling Han's instincts were faster than his consciousness, entering right into the Black Tower. This attack was too terrifying, reaching the level of the spiritual infant tier. Not to mention that he didn't even have the time to activate the Thunder Battle Armor. Even if could, it wouldn't be able to block a spiritual infant tier's heavy attack. The gap was truly too great. Hong. The place he was originally at instantly became a deep pit as a giant mushroom cloud soared into the sky. The destructive power of the spiritual infant tier was too terrifying. This was aiming for his life. Chapter 511, Ambush. Chapter 511, Ambush. Reverie _ Through the Black Tower, Ling Han observed and saw a skinny dark old man appear. He looked ordinary but emitted a baleful presence, frightening people out of their wits. This was of course a spiritual infant tier being, but what surprised Ling Han even more was that the old man had the presence of the dead. Corpse Chi. This old man was from the Thousand Corpse Sect. After staying silent for so long, the Thousand Corpse Sect finally moved. There wasn't just one, as another short and fat old man appeared, looking like a merchant. His eyes were squinted, but as his eyes opened and closed, a shocking, ruthless spirit was emitted. Didn't hit, the skinny and dark old man said. That spatial spirit tool is truly out of the ordinary, being able to block your attack, the short and fat old man said. It certainly is remarkable, the skinny and dark old man said. However, if this thing could be obtained by our sect, then whom would our sect need to fear? Haha, that's right. The tubby old man also rubbed his palms, laughing loudly. The problem was how would they get that treasure? They didn't even know where Ling Han was, so they couldn't even kill him. 9 Clouds, you've dealt with that kid. What weaknesses could we take advantage of? The tubby old man said towards one side. Elder 9 Clouds surfaced and said respectfully, Elder Tian, that kid's martial arts talent is surprising, and he has a keen divine sense. I've wanted to attack time and time again, but have returned empty-handed. This is the North region where spiritual infant tier warriors are kings. This old man won't believe that even a flower blossom tier junior can't be dealt with. Elder Tian was determined. A shockingly chilling glare emitted from his eyes. Guard here, and once he appears, immediately take his life, the skinny and dark old man said. What? They were startled simultaneously as their gazes turned towards the valley's opening, seeing 8 old men tread over slowly. Within a few steps, they appeared before them. So it's Winter Moon Sect's fellow brothers. Elder Tian cupped his hands in obeisance. Who's calling you Winter Moon Sect's brothers? Sure, he Shun said coldly. Since you've seen us, Hurry up and get lost? Get lost? Elder Tian sneered. Sure he shun. You do know what our sect is? The elder of our sect is an almighty shattering void tier elite. 7 senior sect guardians are all at the heaven tier. 33 law kings are at the deity transformation tier. And spiritual infant tier experts like us are in the hundreds. Hearing his words, Sure he shun and the other 7 were stifled. This force was too powerful. Spiritual infant tier experts were actually in the hundreds. Placed in the north region, were all the spiritual infant tier warriors added up even near this amount? The Thousand Corpse sect proved to be an ancient large sect even just rising from the ashes. It had reached such a scale. So what? AO family's elder rolled his eyes. North region's strongest elite is only the spiritual infant tier, and spiritual infant tier experts that cross over the region wall will have their cultivation, and even their life force, cut. Thousand Corpse sect's base should be in middle state. So why don't you request a deity transformation tier elite comes over? Our sect will unite the vast lands sooner or later, and when the time comes, if you guys don't want to become corpse soldiers, you'll have to live at our mercy. Elder Tianche said loftily. A mere region wall. You think our sect's elites can't break through it? Sure he shun, and the other 7 were all shocked. Right, how did the region wall come about? At most, it was the handiwork of a shattering void tier elite, and since that was so, how could it block another shattering void tier elite? Those who comply with us will thrive, and those who resist us will perish. The skinny and dark old man and Elder Tianche shouted at the same time. Bullsh. AO family's elder shouted angrily. Evil never prevails over good. If your sect master dares to take rash actions, would Middle States Heaven's Sword Sect and Cloud Phoenix Sect not intervene to stop you guys? Stop with the nonsense, either get lost or die. The other 7 spiritual infant tier warriors also looked cold. They were truly so awe-inspiringly righteous, but the thing on Ling Han was too precious, and they couldn't not contest for it. If it were simply an ordinary figure, they'd probably break into a quarrel with the Thousand Corpse sect. The Thousand Corpse sect was certainly loathed by everyone, but the key was that 2 people here weren't rats. They were large old tigers, and striking them could harm one's own bones, so who would be willing to start a fight? Elder Tianche and the skinny and dark old man snorted, hallooing, as a ceaseless ear-piercing sounded, for caskets slid over from afar. Terrifying corpse chi filled the air, and could be felt from very far away. These 2 people planned to ambush Ling Han, so they obviously couldn't bring corpse soldiers, which would be too evident. Pong, 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 pong. 4 corpse solders leapt out from the caskets. Their faces were clearly frightening, but a layer of light gold covered their bodies, having a sense of holiness that astonished people. First-tier gold-armored corpse, equivalent to the spiritual infant tier. There certainly was a reason why the Thousand Corpse sect was feared by people. Corpse soldiers didn't fear death, ignored pain, and had astonishing defensive power. And the higher the tier Thousand Corpse sect's disciples were at, the more corpse soldiers they could bring. There were clearly only 2 spiritual infant tier elites here, but they possessed the battle prowess of 6 spiritual infant tiers. And how about now? Elder Tianche said loftily. Sure he shun, and the other 7 frowned. 8 against 6. They still had a firm advantage, but the problem was that even if they could win, they would have to pay a great price. Everyone's target is that kid. Why not wait for him to appear and kill him together? When the time comes, everyone can seize the treasure. Sure he shun said. That's settled then. The 2 spiritual infant tier experts of the Thousand Corpse sect weren't willing to start a fight. After all, they were at a disadvantage in numbers. Once the 2 parties agreed, they withdrew their hostility and waited quietly for Ling Han to appear. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han sighed. With the attack earlier, the speck that Black Tower turned into also moved with the wind, floating to a distant place. Otherwise, if he threw out the god's skeletal remains, it would definitely be able to suppress the 10 spiritual infant tiers onto all 4s. However, would that be effective against the corpse soldiers? Ling Han didn't know. Corpse soldiers were already dead, equivalent to puppets. This thing's never been said to been able to be suppressed by any presence. What to do? Endure till they lose patience and disperse voluntarily. Ling Han immediately shook his head. These people might go search for Ling Dongxing. He decided to break through to the Flower Blossom tier as soon as possible, and then beat these bastards with Black Tower's power boost. He was extremely resolute and immediately set aside all thoughts, cultivating wholeheartedly. He was originally at the middle stage of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, so after 10 days of cultivation, he reached peak stage. Inside his Dantian, the spiritual ocean was vast and mighty. 2 spiritual pedestals rose from within it, infinitely high and extremely magnificent. It'd be best to use a few months to perfect the tier and break through, after there can be no more improvements. However, there isn't so much time now. I must immediately begin charging at the Flower Blossom tier. Ling Han said. Hong, long, long. The bones in his body crackled, as if the chants of Zhao. Lu Yutong and the others sat cross-legged nearby, as this was of great benefit to them as well. Chapter 512, Spiritual Pedestal Births Zhao Flower. Chapter 512, Spiritual Pedestal Births Zhao Flower. Reverie _ Crossing into the Flower Blossom tier from the Spiritual Pedestal tier was a qualitative change. On the Spiritual Pedestal, a martial arts celestial flower would bloom, and one would transcend the mortal limit from then on. Why could Flower Blossom tier warriors allocate the spirit chi of heaven and earth to add to their attacks? It was because of the martial arts celestial flower that could draw the spirit chi of heaven and earth, as if a spirit base. However, the spirit base absorbed spirit chi to convert it into one's own origin power, but the martial arts celestial flower directly added to the attack. But how did one produce a martial arts celestial flower? Plant the martial arts celestial flower seed on the spiritual pedestal and wait for it to bud and grow into a celestial flower. One would then be a Flower Blossom tier expert. However, the first step wasn't to plant the seed, but to select the kind of a martial arts seed. Planting one martial arts seed, I can thereby blossom a celestial flower and cross into the Flower Blossom tier. In the former life, I planted a spiritual seed of fire, and after the celestial flower blossomed, I could invoke the fire spiritual chi within heaven and earth. However, it's said that some can plant down 3 martial arts seeds and blossom 3 celestial flowers in the end, being called 3 flowers crown. I possess a 5-element spirit base, why not try planting 5 seedlings? Martial arts seeds can only be planted at peak stage of the spiritual pedestal tier, so I must make a decision. No need to consider. I walk the path of the strongest, so I'll plant 5 martial arts seeds. Ling Han's expression was resolute as he began to extract from the 5 elements Chaos Lotus's source. This spirit base corresponded to the elements gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. So with these as seeds, the martial arts celestial flower he blossomed could also possess 5 different elements. At that time, he would be able to draw from 5 types of spiritual chi in an attack, and that attack power would obviously be formidable. However, stripping from the spirit base's source element was painful, like being cut by a saber, and made his expression twist involuntarily, revealing an intensely pained expression. Lu Yutong and the other girl's heart ached, especially Yu Hongchang's. Her son was flesh that fell from her own body, making her tears almost fall out. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan grabbed onto her hands on each side, calming her slightly. Extracting the source element of a spirit base. This process was extremely painful, but not dangerous. Ling Han did it once in his previous life, but he had a fire spirit base back then, and only needed to extract it once to finish. Now, it was 5 times. Fortunately, this process was finally completed anyway. Having removed the source elements, the 5 elements Chaos Lotus seemed dispirited and inert, somewhat hurt at the core, but it only needed some time to rest and could still recuperate. Also, since Ling Han was also a heaven-grade alchemist, would he still fear a damaged spirit base? Ling Han began to plant the spirit seeds, but there were only 5 and they couldn't be broken up into parts. He considered it momentarily and decided to care for the Earth's spiritual ocean's spiritual pedestal. As for the other half, that would be for later. Spiritual pedestals were the best soil for spirit seeds. After burying the spirit seed, to let the spirit seed bud and blossom a celestial flower, massive amounts of energy needed to be provided, as well as corresponding martial arts comprehension. These two things were the fertilizer to grow the spirit seed neither could be missing. Ling Han began to chug down spirit medicine and spiritual liquid. As for marital arts comprehension, this he wasn't missing. Even if he planted 5 seeds this time, he was still much at ease, having enough comprehension to aid him back to the heaven tier. When the martial arts seed would bud, how long it would grow, and what celestial flower would bloom, these were all uncertain. Depending on whether there was enough fertilizer, it would be possible to succeed in 1 to 2 days. But if there weren't enough fertilizer, it might be several years, several tens of years, or hundreds of years. There wouldn't be over hundreds of years, since lifespan was a mere 100 years. If one didn't enter the flower blossom tier, one would already be dead. Ling Han, of course, had enough fertilizer. Although there weren't medicinal pills that could make one directly cross into the flower blossom tier, there were too many tonic things, and he didn't wish to cross into it directly. Advancing into the flower blossom tier was to comprehend the Tao of heaven and earth, which was of great benefit, so why miss it? He kept eating, and the 5 spirit seeds soon budded, breaking through the mud and swaying on the spiritual pedestal. The strange thing was that on top of the spiritual pedestal in the heaven spiritual ocean, 5 spirit seeds also budded. What happened? He'd clearly only planted 5 spirit seeds. But this was a good thing, wasn't it? Ling Han didn't have time to care now, simply nurturing the 5 spirit seeds diligently. As they kept growing, the spirit seeds were covered with vein-like patterns, shining resplendent like this was Ling Han's comprehension of martial arts. The spirit seeds grew very fast, and only after a day's effort grew into a firmament tree with a flower bud on top. The celestial flower's blossoming was imminent. Once the celestial flower blossomed, Ling Han would officially advance into the flower blossom tier. Now, well, he was the same as when he'd planted the seed, only at half-step flower blossom tier. Ling Han sat cross-legged. This was the most arduous step and needed the provision of terrifying amounts of energy. On the contrary, martial intent had already densely covered the celestial flower, divine patterns intertwining. It was enough. Eat, eat. Ling Han devoured ravenously like his life depended on it. A Tao fire rose within his body, burning his body and nourishing it ceaselessly with energy. Damn, how come that much energy still isn't enough? He cried out inwardly. When he'd broken through to the flower blossom tier in the past, he used at most 1/100th of that energy, but now it was 100 times more, as if filling in a bottomless pit with no sign of it being enough. He came to a realization. This was because he cultivated indestructible heaven scroll. His physique's toughness was equivalent to rare metals of the same tier, and the problem was with same tier. Since he wanted to advance into the flower blossom tier, his physique obviously had to increase to the hardness of a 6th tier rare metal, but this couldn't possibly appear out of thin air. He obviously had to absorb sufficient amounts of energy to increase his physique. Could this not require massive amounts of energy? Ling Han was now equivalent to a human-shaped spirit tool. An increase from 5th tier spirit tool to a 6th tier one. Was this change not great? Then continue eating. Ling Han turned into Hu Niu, the Chowhound. Lu Yutong and the others stared with eyes wide open. Are you breaking through or turning into a hungry ghost's reincarnation? Even Hu Niu was somewhat shocked, muttering, seems to eat more than Niu. As expected of Niu's Ling Han. He ate for 2 days and 2 nights, finally filling this hole. 5 flower buds trembled lightly, as they blossom at any time. On the heaven spiritual ocean's spiritual pedestal, the 5 celestial flowers were also the same. It was like a mirror. The changes of the earth's spiritual ocean's spiritual pedestal would be replicated on the heaven spiritual ocean's spiritual pedestal, appearing extremely miraculous. Thankfully, that was so Ling Han didn't have any spare spirit seeds to let 2 spiritual pedestals blossom celestial flowers simultaneously. Slowly, the celestial flower blossomed. Dang, dang, dang. The sound of Dao resonated within the Black Tower, thought-provoking. Lu Yutong and the others, regardless of each person's cultivation, all entered into a state of enlightenment. Observing someone's breakthrough, especially to the flower blossom tier, a great threshold of surpassing mortals, had many great benefits. Of course, Ling Han was definitely the one with the greatest changes. On the Earth's spiritual ocean's spiritual pedestal, the 5 martial arts celestial flowers blossomed one by one. An azure flower represented wood, a red flower represented fire, a white flower represented gold, a black flower represented water, and a gold flower represented earth. The flower of 5 elements blossomed all together. The flower blossom tier. Chapter 513. Entrapping spiritual infant tears. Chapter 513. Entrapping spiritual infant tears. Reverie _ Heaven's spiritual ocean's spiritual pedestal also blossomed 5-colored celestial flowers. They swayed slightly even though there was no wind, emitting a presence that transcended mortals. Ling Han opened his eyes abruptly. He finally returned to the flower blossom tier, an important point. In some sense, this represented that he took the first step in returning to the pinnacle. Young Master Han. Everyone was roused, approaching one after another. Son, were you in pain? Yu Hongchang pulled on Ling Han's arm and looked at him from top to bottom. Despite seeing Ling Han's pained expression earlier, she couldn't come up to ask and kept being concerned. No, all is smooth going, Ling Han said with a smile. Congrats, young Master Han. Zhu Wujiao and Guang Yuan stood behind by a lot. They obviously didn't dare to contend with these women, but they were also very moved. It had only been so long, and an 18-year-old youngster had already become a super elite of the flower blossom tier. Placed in the desolate north, that was definitely an invincible existence. Ling Han nodded and said, "Wait for me, take care of some trash first, and we'll drink later tonight." With that said, he stepped out of the Black Tower. Boy! Elder Tian and the dark and skinny old man assaulted him right away. Behind them were 4 corpse soldiers that emitted a golden sheen, but the 8 spiritual infant tier elites from the Winter Moon Sect chose to sit by and watch. Apparently, they had qualms about the god's corpse in Ling Han's hands, and without seeing Ling Han use it, they definitely didn't dare to charge forward. That was simply giving away their lives. How unfortunate, he originally wanted to entrap a bit more people. When Elder Tian and the other old man were close, Ling Han raised his hand, and a god's skeletal remains were unleashed. This old fellow brother probably died for countless of years and wouldn't mind being tossed about repeatedly like this. Old brother, I'll definitely give you a grand burial in the future, Ling Han said inwardly. Pa, 2 great thousand corpse sect elders immediately dropped to the ground. Under the suppression of a god's presences, they couldn't resist at all. However, the 4 corpse soldiers were not a bit affected. They were without consciousness to begin with, so how could they be suppressed by a god's presence? For gold-armored corpses were spiritual infant tier existences. How terrifying were they? Ling Han didn't use Black Tower's power boost immediately, and instead activated the Thunder Battle Armor. Instantly, a flash of lightning spread open and formed a lightning barrier around him. He immediately retreated. He wasn't so crazy as to fight 4 spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers head-on. Flashes of memories revived in his mind, while Ling Han's feet began to move naturally. Demon Fairy Step? This was a heaven tier movement art. It could only be used after advancing into the flower blossom tier, not belonging to mortals. In his previous life, he specialized in cultivating the Demon Fairy Step, using it even at the heaven tier. A feeling of nostalgia welled up, and Ling Han couldn't help but feel bold and courageous, wandering with ease through the attacks of 4 great spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers. Could a high-level heaven-grade movement art not be swift? North Region's martial arts level was low. Even the strongest sects like the Winter Moon Sect and the Beast Emperor Sect had arts that were only medium-level Earth grade. Their skills were also the same, being at most high-level Earth grade. Could these things be compared to a heaven-grade skill? Corpse soldiers' greatest forte was their tolerance in taking punishment, not fearing death nor pain, but they only relied on their instincts in battle. If they could use arts and skills like when they were alive, then that would truly be against reason. So how could such attacks possibly deal with Ling Han, who used the Demon Fairy Step? Could this be the legacy that the brat acquired from the 12 palaces? It's truly amazing to wander easily surrounded by the attacks of 4 corpse soldiers and only be swept occasionally by the dispersing energy. But the battle armor he wears is enough to block it. Why does this battle armor looks like the Thunder battle armor? No way, the Thunder battle armor can't be revitalized. And wasn't it in one of our disciples' hands, called Han something? Han Lin. Hiss? Winter Moon Sect's 8 spiritual infant tier warriors gasped in astonishment simultaneously. Slywasn't Han Lin read backwards Ling Han. Esset. They were actually deceived by Ling Han, swindled of a treasure from their Winter Moon Sect. The power of this Thunder battle armor worn on Ling Han could even block the aftereffects of a spiritual infant tier's power. How valuable was it? We have to get it back, the 8 people said all together, their eyes burning with desire. Under the attacks of 4 corpse soldiers, that boy is unknowingly moving further away from the terrifying corpse bones. Great. Once he's slightly further away, we'll take the chance to attack. All right, we have to kill him in one strike this time. The 8 people observed and waited for the opportunity. Ling Han seemed to be kindled by the fight and forgot that there were still 8 spiritual infant tier elites ambushing him, but this was understandable. He was being attacked by 4 spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers, so how could he have the room to look left and right? He kept retreating, further and further away from the god's corpse. Now, Ao family's elder and the others dashed out. Ling Han had now escaped from the god's corpse's range of influence, and it was the best chance to attack. Shio. 5 in the front, 3 in the back. They started attacking one after another. I was waiting for you guys. Ling Han sneered. He had a heaven-tier divine sense, so how could he possibly have neglected these old bastards? This was the battle strategy he drew up, moving further away from the god's corpse to lure these old bastards out. Hearing those words, Ao family's elder and the other 7 felt their hearts palpitate as an uneasy feeling welled up inside them without any obvious reason. This was an instinctive reaction, and after getting to the spiritual infant tier, they trusted their instincts the most. Thus, they immediately halted, wanting to turn to retreat. Too late. Ling Han raised his right hand, and another god's corpse was thrown out. Wong, a terrifying presence swirled by, and the 5 spiritual infant tier cultivators that charged in front immediately fell to the ground. While the other 3 staggered, they still escaped the divine presence's area of influence. After all, they were far and weren't influenced much. What a pity, Ling Han cried out inwardly. Still, Ao family's elder and He Shun were amongst the 5 people who fell to the ground, making him very pleased. These were the people he definitely had to kill. He shifted on his feet with the demon birth sword already unleashed, attacking towards He Shun. Don't you dare. Afar, the 3 spiritual infant tier elites stamped their feet hastily. The Winter Moon Sect had a total of 9 spiritual infant tier elites. If 5 were to die here, their strength would decrease sharply by half, almost dropping out of the 4 strongest forces. What don't I dare to do? Ling Han coldly, slicing with his sword. Pooh! He Shun's head was cut off and blood instantly surged out violently. A dignified spiritual infant tier elite, one among the strongest beings of the North region, actually died in such a stupid way. Dying without being able to execute any arts and lying on the ground like a dead dog to be slaughtered as one pleased. How different were they then from an insignificant soldier? He Shun's eyes were wide open, his face ashen. Knowing he was about to die, it was full of grievance. Chapter 514, Ending Karma. Chapter 514, Ending Karma. Reverie _ Ling Han pushed on. With 4 gold-armored corpses chasing him, if he let them attack as they pleased, the Thunder battle armor probably wouldn't save him. After all, how could spiritual infant tier beings be underestimated? Ao family's elder revealed a panic-stricken expression. He didn't want to die, and wanted even less to die in the hands of a small figure. Ling Han sneered and said, "I'm a heaven-grade alchemist. Me killing you personally, is that not enough for you to boast about?" The sword swept by, and the Ao family's elder was beheaded, passing away. He leapt repeatedly, reaping all 5 spiritual infant tier warriors' lives, then killed the 2 people from the 1,000-corpse sect at the end. Under the suppression of the god's corpse, these people didn't even have the strength to beg for mercy and could only await death, dying extremely resentfully. Spiritual infant tier elites, beings that should be invincible in the North region. Even if they couldn't win, they could leave leisurely. Spiritual infant tier elites wanting to kill spiritual infant tier elites? Hard. But now, they were like wheat, easily reaped. Once Elder Tian and the skinny Dark Elder died, the 4 gold-armored corpses immediately escaped control. They no longer focused on Ling Han, and instead were filled with killing intent towards any being with flesh, craving to devour blood and flesh. This was the instinct of corpse soldiers. Ling Han sighed. Once the god corpse was out, he could easily control the situation, but it was ineffective towards the 4 already dead corpse soldiers. He originally could not use Black Tower's power boost, but with the cultivation of only Flower Blossom tier, how could he possibly stop these 4 corpse soldiers going on a mass-killing spree? Spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers had extremely tough physiques and could only be killed by many spiritual infant tier elites at least. If they were released in the desolate north, people would be definitely plunged into misery and suffering. "I can't bear the burden of this karma," Ling Han said faintly. Small Tower. Hong. Small Tower immediately primed Black Tower, pouring ceaseless energy towards him and making his cultivation skyrocket. The first layer of the spiritual infant tier. Pooh. Winter Moon Sect's remaining 3 old monsters of the spiritual infant tier almost stared their eyeballs out. They originally thought that Ling Han's Flower Blossom tier cultivation was a state after taking pills, and he was nothing more than a spiritual pedestal tier youngster. However, Ling Han's cultivation rocketed to the spiritual infant tier all of a sudden. They finally realized that Ling Han had actually advanced into the Flower Blossom tier. This youngster was too terrifying. Ling Han temporarily didn't pay attention to those 3 people. The 4 corpse soldiers had to be demolished. This scourge was too great. As the demon birth sword was raised, Ling Han executed Mysterious 3000. 4,000 sword lights waved. Inside Ling Han's Dantian, 10 martial arts celestial flowers undulated slightly, drawing heaven and earth's spirit chi to add to the might of the sword lights. Hong. The sword art's power instantly grew drastically by 100-fold. This was too terrifying. Pu, 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 pu. As sword lights swept by, a gold-armored corpse was directly slashed into pieces. A 10th tier spirit tool coupled with the Mysterious 3000 and the boost of 10 celestial flowers resulted in this surprising effect. Even the gold-armored corpse was almost instantly killed. Winter Moon Sect's 3 old monsters looked at each other, seeing extreme fear on each other's faces. Without demur, they scrammed. This youngster was too strong. Strong to the point that they couldn't even have the courage to fight him anymore. Better return back to the sect where there was the protection of the mountain protecting formation, which was at the deity transformation tier level. Wait another 100 years or so. As the Winter Moon Sect had deep roots, they'd recover from the day's casualties. Ling Han didn't chase. He only wanted to kill Ao family's elder and Sure He Shun. And once these 2 people died, he didn't really care to kill the others. After he recovered slightly, he fired Mysterious 3000 again, slaying another corpse soldier. If they were martial artists, they'd definitely run if they saw 2 companions killed, but Vorp's soldiers didn't fear death. They only had the instinct of devouring flesh and blood. Since Ling Han was a living spirit, not to mention whether he was only at the spiritual infant or the flower blossom tier, the corpses would still charge up even if he were at the shattering void or heaven tier. In a little over 10 minutes, the 4 gold-armored corpses were all annihilated by Ling Han. After Ling Han caught his breath, he stored the 2 god-tier corpses into the Black Tower. The god-tier oppression decreased a little every time it was used, and whether it could suppress spiritual infant tier elites next time was uncertain. He summoned everyone out from the Black Tower and walked towards the Fallen Moon Gorge. Yu Hongchang couldn't help but be excited. Back then, when she and Ling Dongxing came here, they were caught up with by Ao Feng. Then, she was separated with her husband and son. In a flash, 18 years had gone by. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan hurriedly supported her from the left and right, as if treating her like a normal 70 to 80-year-old lady. Seeing this, Ling Han shook his head. Ling Han swept the battlefield and stored the spatial rings of the 7 spiritual infant tier cultivators into the Black Tower. Inside the rings were mostly origin crystals, some were 4 stars. There were also some arts and skills, but none of them qualified for Ling Han to skim through them. The best was medium-level Earth-grade trash. They entered the Fallen Moon Gorge and arrived at the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. Informed that a heaven-grade alchemist arrived, all alchemists came greeting on their knees. Even Yong Longzhong and the other 2 Earth-grade alchemists were no exception, extremely devout as they lay prostrated on the ground. Ling Han helped up the 3 old men one by one and said with a smile, "I already refined the Restore Spirit pill, but I'll refine another medium-level Earth-grade medicinal pill later. All of you come observe." "Thank you, Master Ling." The 3 old men were extremely touched. Having become a heaven-tier alchemist, Ling Han didn't need to care about how they felt, but he still did, making them feel extremely touched and warm inside the hearts. Ling Han only stayed at the Star Brilliance Palace Hall for a day. After he finished refining the pill, he set out for Rain Country. He was in a hurry to let his parents reunite, and wanted even more to see how Ling Dongxing's current situation was. In order to hasten on the journey, he stored everyone inside the Black Tower and used the Demon Fairy Step, dashing towards Diyuan City. After only 3 days, he arrived at Diyuan City. He summoned everyone from the Black Tower again. Ling Han first went to see Diyuan King. "Master Ling." Seeing Ling Han, Diyuan King hurriedly cupped his hands in obeisance. This was a high-level black-grade alchemist, whose status was higher than his. He clearly didn't know that Ling Han not only became a heaven-grade alchemist, but also far surpassed him in martial arts, advancing into the Flower Blossom tier. Ling Han naturally didn't bring out his identity to pressure him. In reality, the status of a high-level black-grade alchemist was great enough here. If he truly said he were a heaven-grade alchemist and a Flower Blossom tier elite, Diyuan King would properly slump onto the ground in fear. He laughed and said, "Diyuan King, haven't seen you for a year. How's everything?" "Thanks to Master, all is well," Diyuan King said with a smile. No kidding, the new Rain Emperor cared greatly for the Ling family, and even brought Diyuan King Manor's status up with them. Ling Han nodded and said, "How's my father?" "A few days ago, several foreigners came to investigate the whereabouts of your father, so I acted on my own and moved your father and the Ling family to a new place," Diyuan King replied. "Very good." Ling Han pat him on the shoulder, then reached out and spread his hands over the table as several bottles of medicinal pills instantly appeared. "Diyuan King, I'm in a rush to see my father. Accept these things. I'll be going now." Chapter 515, Parents Reunite. Chapter 515, Parents Reunite. Reverie _ Diyuan King obviously expressed his thanks, and hurriedly told Ling Han where the Ling family currently lived. He assumed that Ling Han was still a high-level black-grade alchemist, and the medicinal pills he gifted were definitely remarkable. However, when Ling Han left, he picked up the medicinal pills to examine them, and was shocked to the point of almost slumping onto the ground. My goodness! Every single one was of Earth grade, and each bottle had the effects and taboos clearly written on it, making Diyuan King tremble all over. He had hoped to cross into the spiritual pedestal tier, and now he definitely could. He couldn't help but be overcome with emotion. Looking after the Ling family was as simple as the lift of a hand, but it now was exchanged into such substantial rewards. Master Ling, a great person. Master Ling didn't seem to care at all. Earth-grade medicinal pills were too normal for him. He was refining them off-handedly. After he requited the favor, he immediately went to find his mother and the others, leaving Diyuan City. Heading west, they arrived at a small, remote town. Ling Dongxing and the others lived here. The closer they got, the more nervous Yu Hongchang was. She kept touching the corners of her eyes and hair, worried if she got a lot older, and whether Ling Dongxing would recognize her at first sight, feeling both excited and complicated. After they entered the town, they arrived at a large courtyard with its doors closed. Ling Han went up to knock, and in a short while, a voice came from inside. "Whom are you looking for?" "I'm Ling Han." A thump instantly sounded from inside. Apparently, that person tripped. The door then opened as a middle-aged man shouted to Ling Han in surprise, "Young Master Han, you've returned?" He was Ling family's servant. Previously, when the Cheng family almost destroyed the Ling family, he escaped, and later still worked at the Ling family, loyal and devoted. Ling Han revealed a smile and said, "I'm back. Where's father?" "The old master is in the drawing room receiving guests," that servant said. "What guests?" Ling Han asked without thinking. "A matchmaker that's talking to the old master about a marriage," the servant said. Yu Hongchang was originally nervous, but as she heard that, she blew up, stepping forward quickly to ask, "Oh, your old master is taking a wife?" That servant didn't recognize Yu Hongchang, but since she was with Ling Han, he naturally didn't dare to be negligent and said, "The old master already lost his wife for many years, and we servants hope that the old master can remarry, having someone as company." "That's great. I sure want to see it." Yu Hongchan's face turned cold. Taking large strides right through the garden, she started walking towards the drawing room. The servant wanted to stop her. "You're a guest and can't act recklessly, okay?" Ling Han hurriedly held him back and said smilingly, "Uncle Fu, you'd better pray for yourself." "Young Master Han, what do you mean?" Uncle Fu was puzzled. "That's my mother," Ling Han said with a smile. Uncle Fu was startled. He thought with doubt, wasn't young Master Han's mother the old master's wife? But didn't the mistress die long ago? Oh my, could she not have died? He was immediately freaked out, said that the old master remarry in front of the mistress. If the mistress held a grudge against him in the future, wouldn't that be terrible? Ling Han laughed loudly and patted him on the shoulder. It's nothing. Don't worry." "Young Master Han, don't give me a hard time like that, not telling me right away," Uncle Fu said with a bitter face. It'd be strange if a grudge wasn't held against him. Yu Hongchang obviously wasn't such a person, and Ling Han was only joking with Uncle Fu. Where would one get such a loyal and devout servant? He, Lu Yutong, and the others didn't enter. After a short while, a 40-year-old woman ran out with a palm print on her face. From the size of it, it definitely was Yu Hongchang who did it. This matchmaker lady probably spoke without much thought inappropriately, angering Yu Hongchang. However, only giving her a slap and not breaking her head, Yu Hongchang's character and conduct could be seen. An indistinct cry sounded from the drawing room. Ling Han pondered and said, "Find a place to stay first. My father and my mother probably have no time for us today." "Why?" Hunyou asked, tilting her head. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, "They're busy being intimate." Lu Yutong and the other girls blushed, while Hunyou held on to Ling Han's neck and said in a sweet voice, "Ling Han, be intimate with Niu." Ling Han instantly retreated in defeat. As expected, only in the afternoon of the second day did Ling Dongxian finally have time to call in Ling Han. Yu Hongchang snuggled up by the former's side, without a bit of the previous day's lioness look. As the father and son met, they obviously hugged each other tightly, shedding a few manly tears. The family spoke for a while, and naturally conversed about martial arts. According to Yu Hongchang's wish, there was no need for revenge. Living happily as a family was better than anything else. However, Ling Han and Ling Dongxing desired revenge, and wouldn't possibly let go of the enmity with Ao Feng. Ling Han specially only incapacitated Ao Feng's spirit base, just so that Ling Dongxing could personally kill him. "Father, your spirit base has recovered now, right?" Ling Han asked. "It's recovered." Ling Dongxing's was in high spirits. He not only recovered his spirit base, but also touched the threshold of crossing into the gushing spring tier and would break through soon. "Oh, right, the alchemist you asked to come is still staying here." "Oh, Lu Jitong was actually still living here. No wonder he wasn't to be seen at the North Pill Pavilion. Ling Han nodded and said, I incapacitated Ao Feng's spirit base and killed Ao family's elder. Father, you only have to cross into the Flower Blossom tier before you can personally take revenge. Ling Dongxing was shocked. Ao family's elder, a spiritual infant tier being, was actually killed by his son? But how could Ling Han possibly lie to him? He couldn't help but laugh loudly. This son was too accomplished, making him extremely joyful. Ling Han and Ling Dongxing discussed their following plans. The news that Ling Han received the coordinates to a god's treasure trove soon spread throughout the entire world, and there were definitely countless people in the dark that wanted to murder him for gain. Ling Dongxing and the others would become his Achilles heel, and there would definitely be lots of forces that wanted to capture them to threaten Ling Han. Thus, they planned to move and conceal their names for a time. Ling Han also planned to use this time to increase his father's strength and accumulate his own cultivation. From the spiritual pedestal tier to the flower blossom tier, he rushed it too much and had to stabilize his base so as to avoid severe problems in the future. Yu Hongchang obviously had no suggestions. It was enough for her that the family was reunited. Her demands were extremely simple. Move. Ling Han stored everyone into the Black Tower. This way, they would be untraceable. After leaving a letter for the Yuan King, Ling Han treaded through the air, leaving Rain Country. After hesitating slightly, he chose to head towards Fire Country. Crossing a range of mountains and rivers, Ling Han appeared at a small town at Fire Country's border. It was interlocked with Wind Country's territory. This Baoyang town was an unregulated area, shockingly poor and a place beyond the law. Nobody would find it strange if new faces appeared here. People hoed their own potatoes and wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Ling Han bought a large courtyard and let everyone out. This courtyard was truly large and came with an extremely large vegetable garden. If they raised some poultry, they could be almost self-sufficient. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.